Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, citizens of Tampa and board members. The Community Redevelopment Agency meeting for July 23rd, 2020 will now come to order. As the chair, I will lead in a prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask if you're available to stand, please do so. Oh, loving God, I pray that you will comfort those who are suffering sickness in our city, county, and throughout the world. Lend skills to the hands of your healers and bless the means used for a cure. Give us such confidence in the power of your grace that even when afraid, we put our whole trust in you, our Savior. Amen. Madam Clerk, will you now please call the roll at this time? I'm sorry, pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic of which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Vieira.
Here.
Dingfelder.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
Citro.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
And Booth.
Here. Attorney Massey, at this time we're going to public comment. Will you please read the protocol and rules for public comment, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman Goods. This is Morris Massey, the CRA attorney. For the record, this meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency of Tampa is being conducted virtually through the use of communication via technology in accordance with Governor DeSantis' Executive Order 20-69, as by Executive Order 20-150, and in accordance with the CRA's Emergency Rules of Procedure adopted per CRA Resolution 2020-07. In connection with this meeting, all voting by the CRA board members should occur by way of roll call vote. All speakers must be recognized by the CRA chair before speaking. And please identify yourself if you ask to be recognized. Members of the public will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard before the CRA board takes any official action during the general public comment section of which is about to occur. Public participation in this meeting is allowed by way of written communication received by email or regular mail, which has been distributed by the CRA secretary to all CRA board members in advance of this meeting, voicemail, or live comment during the public comment section of the hearing. Public comment is generally limited to 3 minutes and should be limited to the matters on the agenda. I would ask now for the CRA secretary to confirm that all email or regular mail comments about today's meeting are distributed, whether there are any voicemail comments played, and then to proceed with the live comment section of the public comment of this meeting. Thank you.
They have been received and filed. All public comment.
Thank you. And are there any voicemails at all to be played?
No.
Okay.
No, just written.
Okay, and then I think you have a list of folks that have registered to provide live comment during this section. So I think unless the chair has any other matters that he'd like to bring up before we go into public comment, I think we're ready to move to that portion of the agenda.
Great.
I'm ready to move forward with public comment.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. The first public comment speaker I have this morning is Connie Burton. All right. If you can hear me, Ms. Burton. Oh, okay, hold on. You need to unmute yourself. Okay, we're going to move to the next one until we get that corrected. The next one is Angela Judge. Ms. Judge, please unmute yourself and you can speak for 3 minutes.
Good morning, board members and community members. Are you able to hear me properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to take a moment, first of all, to thank everyone for the diligent effort that's been going on in the East Tampa community. I wanted to just take a minute also just to raise concern that we are looking for opportunities in our community that we hear that are available, but we don't seem to have East Tampa residents being able to take full advantage of opportunities. The housing, availability of housing is limited. The cost of housing in our area seems to be skyrocketing for no apparent reason. We're being inundated with phone calls daily, asking for us to sell our homes here in the area, but we're not even able to afford to make purchases in the area that is near and dear to our hearts. I've been a resident of East Tampa for 58 years, all of my life, and I want to remain a resident in this area. So I'm listening to the board meeting today and will be on future meetings as I'm available to, so that I can hear what opportunities are remaining available or becoming available for us. And not just hear things that sound nice, but I want to see some action behind some of these words. So I just want to make sure that you all know that we are listening, we're here, and moving forward, we want to see real opportunities for residents in this community. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and we'll continue to listen diligently.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to Connie Burton. If you could unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes. All right, we'll go on to Gloria Jean Royster. Please unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Ms. Royster, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. All right, we're going to skip that person and go on to Linda Remond.
Hello, good morning, Councilman. Thank you for your time today. I'm Linda Raymond, President and CEO of the Tampa Downtown Partnership, and we serve as a steward of downtown Tampa and utilize public and private collaboration to encourage physical and economic development. As a proactive leadership organization, we act as an advocate for the downtown community, including 240 member companies, 14,000 residents, and 60,000 plus employees. The downtown and Channel District CRAs both fall within Tampa's downtown and have played an integral role in fostering development, growth, and revitalizing these neighborhoods. We understand the reasoning behind the CRA board wanting to explore a cap for the downtown CRA while still allowing to move projects such as workforce housing and infrastructure improvements forward. However, we feel that sunsetting the Channel District CRA early in fiscal year 22 would be a detriment to the Channel District neighborhood. Residents and property owners have invested in this area under the notion that the CRA would remain in place till 2033. We support the Channel District CRA exploring ways to focus funds for its remaining term on purchasing land for building workforce housing, green space for parks, and other infrastructure improvements. Our community as a whole would benefit from better housing affordability in our urban core. In addition to good access to transportation, jobs, and amenities that don't require a car, attainable housing will help ensure our downtown is a diverse place for all. Because this decision has far-reaching impact for all of Tampa's downtown, we hope that the CRA board will allow the Channel District and downtown CRAs to continue to serve as a catalyst for projects and growth within their respective neighborhoods until their scheduled expiration dates, even if that means exploring all other options. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope you all stay healthy and well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Raj Patel. You have 3 minutes. You may speak. Mr. Patel? Okay, we'll go to the next speaker, Andy Scaglione. Please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. I've been involved in channel side since 1983, 37 years ago. Channel side is very, very special to me. I was born in Tampa, gonna die in Tampa. I was 6 years chair of the channel side and currently I'm a CAC member. I was involved in the naming of the street from 13th Street to channel side. Been involved in in 2003 when we started the CRA. Before I start with my presentation, my close friend Marvin Knight did not make it speak this morning, but he wanted me to relay that he thought it was irresponsible to create uncertainty of all CRAs by doing what's happening today, and especially during COVID-19. There's a lack of leadership to pit different CRAs against other CRAs. I'll go into my presentation. To give back close to half the money back to the county, we represent the city, and there's no, again, it's irresponsible even to propose that. The money would go back into the general revenue fund. It couldn't be pinpointed saying it's going to go to this area, to this area, to this area. That cannot happen. So again, very irresponsible. Channel side is very unique that if you look at our most active developers, they actually live in channel side. Unlike other areas where developers come in, make as much money as they can, and they're out from out of town, these guys, Ken Stoltenberg, they live in channel side. You look at what the developments he's done, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And he's done quality projects. You look at Raj Patel, he lives in channel side. You look at Michael Leeds, he lives in channel side. Very, 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 and that's why there's the mentality is always quality versus quantity. There was never any conversation with any CAC member or developer of the active developers before this motion was made. Again, irresponsible. As you know, all CRAs in the state of Florida in 2042. When investors and just homeowners, for that sake, not even developers, homeowners had assurances that the CRA and channel side would go to 2033. To pull the rug, again, is irresponsible. And it's not right to people that have invested their hard-earned money in an area. We have future projects still left in channel side. We have north of Twigs. We have east of channel side, the port property, close to 50 acres there. We have the International Ship Repair, already been zoned. We have over 20 acres there. There's still a lot left in channel side. That parks, I'm all for having one less building and having more green space. We're getting more families moving into channel side, unlike before when it started. Need more now. Instead of dog parks, we need to look at playgrounds for kids.
Thank you, Mr. Scaglione. Your 3 minutes is up.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I just want to say infrastructure is not a want, it's a need. And we need a lot of infrastructure in channel side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Scaglione needs an extra minute or two, he's put a lot of time in the channel side.
If he needs it, I'll give him an extra minute.
Andy, you still
Thank you
on?
very much. Again, we need to get this strategic action plan. This was done in 2006. We need to get that updated. As you know, your strategic plan is your roadmap. It's your picture of where you want to go, and you draw a picture. And it's what an organization does at some point in time to find out the direction, the nature, and the composition of where they want to be. So that needs to be done immediately. Again, we have infrastructure needs. These aren't pretty. These are wants. These aren't wants, these are needs. I don't want to be redundant, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be saying the same thing. Thank you very much, and appreciate y'all.
Mr. Scaglione.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Brian Langford. Please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Langford? All right, sounds like we're having technical difficulties on his end. I'm going to move back to Connie Burton. If you could hear me, please unmute yourself. I'm going to move back to Gloria Jean Royster. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself. Okay, we're going to move back to Raj Patel. Mr. Patel, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had computer difficulties before. I just wanted to, I'll be brief. My comment is, I've been a commercial property owner in the district for the past decade, and a resident for the past 5 years of those. And I've seen the growth, the tremendous growth we have in the past 10 years, from vacant warehouses and rundown lots. Many of those warehouses were mine, actually. But the progress we've made is nowhere far from complete. There's still so much to do, including pedestrian safety improvements on Channelside Drive, workforce housing. But in my opinion, the most important missing piece is the park system. Before the Channel District, I was a resident of Tampa Heights. And the reason I feel that neighborhood is such a tight-knit, productive neighborhood is because of their park system. You're never more than 1 or 2 blocks from a pocket park, high-quality pocket park, distributed throughout the neighborhood. And here in the Channel District, sunsetting the CRA, we don't want to be relegated or labeled as an extension of, UT student housing, because we're so much more than that. We have families that live down here. We have families that live down here. We have school buses during the school year picking up and dropping off kids right in the middle of our neighborhood. And there's still not a single playground anywhere in this neighborhood, not a single swing set anywhere in this neighborhood for children, for families. We just recently got our first human park. We've got plenty of dog parks, but first human park, and even that park is very specific on the uses that can be used there. Just in general, missing out on having parks throughout the neighborhood is what creates a cohesive, long-term, prosperous neighborhood. And I'm a firm believer that great parks create great neighborhoods, and all these great neighborhoods are what create great cities. And sunsetting the CRA early is stunting the growth of our neighborhood from becoming a great neighborhood, and not only stunting our neighborhood, stunting the entire urban core and the city from continuing the progress we've made over the past 10 years. Thank you.
So Lane, you want to read the list again for one last time, for those who may be having difficulties?
Sure, give me 1 second. All right, next I have is, I'm going to go back to Brian Langford. If you can hear me, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, City Council, Mr. Chairman, others. My name is Brian Langford, and I represent Transcontinental Marine Repair and Dry Dock Corporation, which is the owner of approximately 26 acres on the east side of Channelside Drive, which property surrounds the waterfront at the north end of the Ybor Channel. Transcontinental Marine's property is adjacent to and just north of the Fort Tampa Bay property, also located on the east side of Channelside Drive. It makes up a significant portion of the Channelside District CRA area. For more than 40 years, this property has been used by International Ship Repair as a shipyard providing for the repair, construction of ships and other maritime vessels. The mission statement for the Channelside District CRA states that, amongst other things, it's intended to facilitate the support of prospective investors and develop confidence sufficient to encourage redevelopment in the district, which will then result in urban projects, job creation, and an enhanced tax base in the area. In recent years, Transcontinental Marine has spent millions of its own dollars for the rezoning of its property from what was previously designated as heavy industrial to provide for a mixed-use redevelopment, including residential, office, retail, and commercial uses. For years, the development of the Tampa's Central Business District has been expanding north up Channelside Drive, and now includes several completed residential and office projects and a few newly announced residential projects that are on the west side of Channelside, directly across from Transcontinental Marine's property. Additionally, in a world dealing with economic uncertainty that has accompanied issues such as COVID-19, any and all enticements for redevelopment should be maintained in order to encourage the redevelopment that the CRA was intended to accomplish. However, now that the Channelside District seems ripe for bringing the much needed and anticipated redevelopment, City Council now has put forth a resolution to cap and terminate the CRA and redirect funds for alternative uses. In the event the City Council passes this resolution, it will divert what could be tens of millions of dollars from the Channelside District that, according to the CRA's own mission statement, were designated to support prospective investors and develop confidence sufficient to encourage redevelopment in the district. Since the CRA was created in 2004, its intended purpose has been to provide that revenue source to support and encourage the redevelopment in the Channelside District. And yet now, when the time seems imminent for such redevelopment, City Council wants to cap and redirect the funds intended for the Channelside District. Accordingly, Transcontinental Marine objects to such a cap and redirections of funds and requests City Council to reject such a proposal, and instead would request that the CRA District go ahead and update its strategic action plan to address the Channelside District needs and let the other CRAs address their own needs. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, this is James Felder. Can I correct and clarify something the gentleman just said for the record?
Ms. Bingfield, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Sir, I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to correct and clarify. I believe the original intent of the motion was asking staff to get back to us with a report about the possibility of terminating or modifying the term of the downtown and the Channelside CRA. I don't believe that the CRA, and you call it City Council, but we sit as the CRA, I don't believe that it was ever the intent of the voters of the motion to say that we were going forward with that. It was to the maker of the motion, I believe, ask staff to come back and report to us today on that possibility, and that's as far as it's gotten. So I just wanted to clarify that that's where we are in the process. Where it goes from here, who knows? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, are there any more for public comment?
Sir, we do have, go back to Connie Burton, and I see her on my panelist list. However, she has not put her PIN in so that I'll be able to unmute her. So I'll call her name again and see if she can hear me. Connie Burton, if you can hear me, please put your PIN in so that I can unmute you. We'll give her a couple of seconds here.
Celine, is it possible for you to read her out her PIN just in case she's having trouble finding it in her email?
We'll provide a number to call you so she can get her PIN number, or anyone else who's having technical difficulties in getting online.
Absolutely. If you can hear me, please call me at 813-274-7064. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and call down a list of public comment requests, but they have not logged on to the webinar. I have Celeste Judge Johnson, Craig Fox, Jeanette Bradley, James DeMario, and I'm gonna put you all on hold for just 1 second so I can assist Burton.
Okay, Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I am conferencing in Ms. Burton, and she's going to speak for her 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burton, you may speak now.
Yes, good morning, council, and thank you so very much for your diligence and patience. Technology ain't my number one. The reason I wanted to speak this morning is because I continue to be very, very concerned about making sure that the board keep front and center the needs of this entire city. The death of Mr. George Floyd brought into all of our vision that changes needed to occur, not just in social services, but in our housing needs, educational needs, healthcare, you name it. And it would take some communities 50+ years to catch up. The proposal to remove monies from CRAs that they have abundantly made great strides would see that we have a full understanding, that we understand how we all can live, how we can all overturn great disparities. I would hope that we don't continue to be a do-nothing and that we push hard. The mission of all CRAs, as I have read it, should include in their provisions the ability to provide home for essential workers at this point. Downtown, channel side do not show that they have the ability to move in that direction. And so why not that community that is beautiful, that has added great wealth to Tampa's value. But go beyond downtown and channel side and tell me what you see. You see a bunch of despair. I'm also concerned this morning on the agenda, the request to approve for surveillance.
9:30, let me have my phone.
street lights
Please mute your
and
phone.
cameras throughout this city. I hope y'all wouldn't say a no to that at this time, that what our community need now is a lift. Economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. We're sorry about the technical difficulties. Madam Deputy Clerk, are there anyone else we need to hear from?
Yes, I will go ahead and continue to read the list of registers that did not log on to the webinar.
Welcome to
Kaya McCaskill, Allison Hewitt, Kathy Stokes, Dr. Vondelin Wright, Regina Gambriel, Candy Lowe, Carol Ransom, Noreen Copeland Miller, and Denise Pate. And that would end the list of the public comment registers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. Therefore, we'll move on to staff reports.
Our first speaker today is Ken Stoltenberg on behalf of the Channel District CAC. As the chair, will be doing our monthly report today, and I do believe he's on the phone.
Can you hear me, Michelle? It says it's working.
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, Michelle, I have not done this before, so do you want me to do my presentation first, or is that what I'm supposed to do, or just speak for a couple minutes generally about what we're doing as the CAC?
Shalene, can you bring up his PowerPoint presentation? There we go. Ken, why don't you start with the PowerPoint, and then you can fill them in on everything you've been doing, and then address any issues with that and any comments you want to make to sum up your report.
Okay, good. Well, gentlemen, I have prepared a short PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you very quickly, and then I'm going to propose, I'm going to present you with a couple of challenges of the resolution that was presented, and then hopefully present you with a solution that, oddly enough, just might make everybody happy. I thought of it on the rowing machine this morning, so I haven't really, you'll be the first to hear it. I'm going to ask who's ever running the presentation, I'm going to say advance the slide. So if you could go to the next slide, please. This is the mission statement of the Channel District. It comes right out of the Strategic Action Plan, and it talks about the things that we want to eliminate, blighted, unsafe conditions, and develop investor confidence to encourage extensive redevelopment and provide for affordable housing to residences at low and moderate income. It also anticipates that the Channel District will enjoy an increasing synergy with both the Central Business District and Ybor City and other nearby urban neighborhoods, which could include, say, the Heights or East Tampa. Next slide, please. I like pictures. This is a kind of grainy picture, but it's of the Channel District. This is actually on the cover of the Strategic Action Plan. It was taken in 2004. Not a lot going on. Next slide. That's the same picture today. Looks a whole lot different and a whole lot better. But as you can see, the area to the east of Channelside Drive and about half the area north of Twig Street is still fallow and undeveloped, and some things still need to happen there. About just under a third of the district has still not been developed. Next slide. This is the current CRA Action Plan, and it talks about developing 221 acres that's the entire land area of the Channel District. It doesn't speak to redeveloping a portion of it. It also speaks to marketing and public awareness, and that's something we've been working with staff on to get programming for the new park on Madison Street. It also speaks to public open space. I'm gonna hit on that, and it speaks on parking. It also speaks, as we said, to workforce housing. Next slide. This is the actual budget out of the Strategic Action Plan written in 2006. As you can see, there's two huge line items. The largest line item is $30 million for parks. The next largest line item is $7 million for improvements to those parks. The total budget is $56,400,000. Next slide. Now this shows what we've actually spent to date on parks. It's just over $4 million. So just over 10% of what was allocated in the strategic action plan. So we spent nowhere near what was contemplated for open space. Next slide. This is a projected amount, what was originally projected as revenue and what we actually got. The red numbers are estimates by me, and it assumes that the money that we're getting increases by 10% every year. So as you can see, if the argument is the channel district has been much more successful than we thought it was going to be, the answer is no. It was projected to bring in $435 million. It will bring in approximately 86. Next slide. This shows what the revenue could be if what we got in 2019 increases by 10% a year, 15% a year, and 20% a year. It's actually increased by more than that if you look at the historical. So we're talking big dollars, gentlemen, anywhere between 200 million and almost $500 million. Next slide. Again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This is what it looked like in 2004. Next slide. This is what it looks like now. I'm proud of the fact that I've been involved in over $300 million of direct investments, and I've helped other people make investments of almost $1 billion in this district. That's something I'll never shy away from that. I'm going to give you 3 potential issues and then a solution. The first issue—
Ken, we lost you. I'm not quite sure if you accidentally got muted or if you lost the connection.
Shit. No, I haven't lost the connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard it. Mr. Chairman,
You hear me, Councilman Goods?
I heard it.
Okay,
I heard him.
I'm almost done.
I didn't lose him.
I'm almost done. There's 3 issues and then a solution, I think. The first issue is disparate treatment. There's a modification to the downtown CRA, which is capping their income at either this year's level or some level in the future and letting them keep most of their revenue. The amendment for our CRA was to do the opposite, to end it and not let us keep any but a small fraction of what is to be created through the term of the CRA. I think you've got a disparate treatment and an equal protection argument there. The second is called equitable estoppel. People haven't invested over $1 billion in the Channel District with the expectation that the CRA would be there until 2033. I know this because I've met with every single large developer who's done anything here since 2005, and I've told them all about the CRA. We've got a good source of revenue for a prescribed period of time. The courts have said in the past that if, to the extent that government makes a promise and people make decisions based on that, they cannot at a later date make it illusory and take it away. So I think that's a pretty good issue. The last issue is whatever you do to the Channel District CRA, you do to every CRA. If investors get the sense that the compact that's made between the CRA and the city can just be torn up at any time, nobody's going to invest in it. You're going to have a very hard time having people invest in the CRAs that need the investment the most: East Tampa, West Tampa, and Drew Park. So to the extent that you set a precedent that, even though a promise was made by a former council that it can be torn up at any time, you're really hurting the CRAs that need the most help. Now, a quick solution. Here's what I think we should do. And we've had several special meetings with the CAC board. And what we did get staff to do is they have a proposal to update the strategic action plan. We attempted to do that at the April 2019 meeting, and we were told by staff we couldn't do it. Well, we told staff they were going to do it, and now they're doing it. And we did kind of have a come to Jesus meeting with them about how things were going to run. I'm new as the president, but staff's not going to tell us what to do anymore. We're going to come before you, and I'll be at every meeting, and we're going to ask you what we think, recommend what we think you guys should propose. and you can decide to do it or not. Staff's not going to do that anymore. I think what we need to do is update the strategic action plan, which we're starting that process, albeit tardily. After we have that, then we can have a list of projects that the community has had input on, and we can come up with a budget. To the extent that the money generated, I've just showed you some pretty big numbers. You know, if we've got a huge amount of money that we can't possibly spend, we don't need gold-plated street signs, you know, at all. But if there is a bunch of money left over, and I think there probably will be, I don't know why you wouldn't want to say, okay, give us, you know, X amount of revenue for the rest of the CRA, and then maybe go back to the county and ask if you can spend some of that money in East Tampa, West Tampa, and Drew Park. I don't think they would say no, because if they did, then you could just say, well, then I guess we can order gold-plated street signs for the challengers because they're going to have tons of cash. The motion made for downtown, I don't think was necessarily a crazy motion. If there is excess money and it could help other areas, I don't think that the residents of the Channel District are opposed to helping other neighborhoods at all. But they do want to make sure that needs are addressed first, because that is the mission of the CRA. So we don't want to take anything away from anybody else. We never did. We just want to make sure there's enough money to do the things in our district first. So and what I will say is this, and I'll close with it. I think that there is a way to make everybody happy and help all those CRAs. And I think the Channel District would love to be a part of that, so long as they have enough money to take care of the things that are in their district and they know that's going to happen. So and the last thing would be is, if Mr. Carlson's motion for discussing changing around the CRA shook staff up enough so we could actually update our strategic action plan to figure out what we're doing, which they told us we couldn't do before, but evidently now it's possible. Thank you very much, Councilman Carlson. I'd like you to consider the points that I've just made, and I'll listen to the rest of your discussion. Thank you very much, all, and have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Stoltenberg, for your comments. Any, moving on to item number 2.
Good morning, Chair and CRA board members. We have our monthly CRA staff report, and if we can hear Jeanette, we'll start with Jeanette Fenton on West Tampa CRA.
Good morning, Jeanette LaRussa Fenton, Interim Manager of Drew Park and West Tampa CRA. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will begin. First off, with the West Tampa CRA direct activities, the CAC has continued to meet on a regular basis along with all of its subcommittees. And I am very pleased to report that we've had good participation, not only from the CAC members, but also from the public, and we are receiving very good input. One of the major projects that was undertaken by the CAC through its infrastructure subcommittee is the review of the West Tampa overlay for potential revisions, since the overlay is about 15 years old now. They have worked very hard on this project along with our planning department staff and historic preservation. And you will be seeing in a public workshop probably in September, the first batch of suggested revisions to the West Tampa overlay. More will come. There was a decision to move forward with the ones that we could get through first and then proceed with the other more complex ones. In terms of the One Tampa plan or One Tampa relief program, 8 businesses within the West Tampa CRA received funding assistance, totaling close to $15,000, with the CRA picking up $7,402 of that. The Special Events Subcommittee is working on the first West Tampa CRA newsletter, and we are expecting to have publication of that probably in late September or early October. As you all know, there is a tremendous amount of development going on in the West Tampa CRA and the greater West Tampa area. I've just highlighted a few of the activities. Everyone is familiar with the development going on at West River. There are currently 3 towers under construction along with the renovation of the Bethune High Rise for seniors. The site work is about completed for a large luxury apartment complex bounded by Howard, Armenia, Lemon, and State. The site is essentially scraped, and we expect construction to begin there shortly. And then we have the construction on the Green Spine cycle track and the Cypress Street outfall along Cass Street. And it is quite an intense construction area at this point. The construction has been essentially complete between North Boulevard and Willow, and now construction is happening between Willow and Rome Avenues. Are there any questions before I move to Drew Park?
A quick question, Mr. Chairman, Dingfelder.
You recognize, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Fenton, thank you, as always, for your professional work, and we appreciate you coming back to pinch hit. The question I had was as related to the relief program. I know that our relief program was sort of set up as an interim program until the county and the feds kicked in. I don't think we had a huge amount of, we had some success as you identified with, I think, what was it, less than 10 businesses. But I'm just wondering, are we going out there, and now that the county is giving out even more money through the federal government, what do they call that, the RRR or something, that are we going out and aggressively helping, businesses, small businesses that we know might be hurting plug into that county program?
Well, first of all, a clarification. The business assistance that I reported was for phase 1. I don't have the data yet for phase 2, so that might include more businesses that were assisted. And as for promoting the county programs, we have been doing that largely via email communications and talking about it at meetings and so forth. I don't know that I would term that as an aggressive. Am I out there knocking on doors? No, I am not. I wish I could, but as a part-time employee, it's virtually impossible for me to do that. But I certainly would be open to any suggestions for better marketing of those programs.
Okay. Yeah, I guess just as long as businesses, and that would be really Michelle and all of our CRAs, know where they can get help and maybe, just helping people fill out the applications and get their documentation through. So that might be more to Michelle than you, Jeanette, but I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dingfelder?
Yes, sir.
And that's a very valid point. Marketing, you can see some of these CRAs do not have a robust marketing plan. And that's something that I'm hoping we talk with Ms. Van Loan in the future about, that all the CRAs need to have some type of marketing strategy to make sure that the citizens in these CRAs know about the programs. Some citizens don't have computers, especially some of our elderly citizens. They don't know how to work or operate. But I think we have to have a way to where we can get some literature on their doors in reference to getting involved in some of these programs, especially some of these housing programs. I just got a call the other night from one of the young ladies who handles the housing program, saying that she's now starting to get a few people in that program. It's working, but she wishes we had some more marketing. So I think in the future, I'm hoping Ms. Van Loan with every CEC, and that they have a marketing strategy to where they have an actual company or somewhere that can do and market, be it TV, be it putting door hangers on doors, especially with my tree fund that I'm going to talk about with East Tampa coming up when Mr. Johnson comes up. So I just think that we need to have a robust marketing program for all these CRAs to make sure people know what we have. You may continue, Ms. Jeanette.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that you've mentioned that in the past. Maybe as we go into our next budget cycle, which I know is not today, we can look to even hire one or two Ashley Bellmans of our own on the CRA side, and that person or persons could assist all the CRAs. Maybe we'll look into that, but I appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. You may continue, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you so much. And before I move on to Drew Park, I did want to mention that and commend the county because they have placed signs throughout the community at major intersections promoting the economic recovery program. So there is some marketing, non-electronic media marketing being done that way. So we hope that reaches at least some people that might not be plugged in through computers and online. Moving on to Drew Park. I'm very pleased to report that the Tampa Bay Boulevard Linear Park is virtually completed. There's still some street striping to be done and some minor elements. We are hoping to have some type of dedication ceremony once we get past the COVID restrictions. So we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, I expect that it will probably be activated for public use probably sometime within the next 30 days or so. So that is something a long time in the making. The Drew Park Strategic Action Plan update is in full swing. We are planning the first public virtual community meeting, most likely the last week in August. We are also creating a web page, an interactive web page that the public can use to get all information about the project, and also it will be interactive and with links to a survey and various other means to communicate public input. You approved a facade grant for the property on Dale Mabry that was the site of the Landers Steakhouse, so we are very pleased about that. That has been a long time eyesore on Dale Mabry in a premier location, and we are pleased that it is being renovated to a multi-tenant type project and will be a much needed addition to the Dale Mabry frontage. We did have one Drew Park business that participated in phase 1 of the One Tampa Relief Program, and again, hoping that more have participated in phase 2 and phase 3. The construction on the CAE project is continuing. That will bring at least 100 new jobs to the Drew Park area, so we're very pleased about that. And another very positive announcement is the opening of Two Shepherds Tap Room, which is a craft brewery, a new construction project on Grady Avenue. And it is rather unique because it is Tampa's first and only indoor and outdoor dog park and bar. Of course, these are difficult times for those types of businesses to be opening with COVID, but we wish them very well, and I know that they will thrive at their location in the Drew Park CRA. That concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
So next we can go to Ms. Courtney Orr for the Ybor CRAs.
Yes, hi, this is Courtney Orr, CRA manager for areas. And we have been communicating pretty heavily these last several months, just communicating to the businesses, the residents, merchants, what can and can't be done, especially letting them know about the relief programs that do exist. So the One Tampa Business Relief Fund 1 and 2, and then round 3 that began this month. We also have communicated the Lift Up Local Economic Recovery Plan extension that goes through July 30th, and I think is supposed to be evaluated as we get closer to that date, whether an extension or not will happen with it. But the restaurants have truly appreciated use of the sidewalk to extend their footprint out into the public space there. So we do flash notices, daily social media postings. Daily, we update our COVID-19 online resource page. We have our standalone website, that's yborcityonline.com. So we have a dedicated COVID-19 resource page there. So we feel we're pretty effective from external standpoint of communicating out to the public what it is they need to know. And to your point, Chairman, is we have a postcard that we're going to be sending out here within the next probably week, and that'll go to probably about roughly 1,100 addresses, so that those who may not be well connected onto the internet can get something in their actual mailbox. It'll encourage them to sign up for our communications, including highlighting the fact that we have that COVID-19 web page, should they be able to access a computer to get all that information. As far as the county program, we have had a guest speaker from the Entrepreneur Collaborative Center. We're fortunate enough to have that in our jurisdiction. So we are encouraging people that do need assistance with those programs in the application process can sign up for a virtual call with an ECC staff member, an Entrepreneur Collaborative staff member, to assist them in going through that application process with the county. So from an external standpoint, we've been strongly communicating, and from an internal standpoint, we are working closely with our solid waste department, our parking department. With the uptick of business for the restaurants, we've had to make sure that solid waste was resuming more normal operations. When the businesses weren't closed, they weren't needing that much pickup. That more activity is obviously happening, that we need their support. And then the fluidity of the parking department has been great. We have our Ybor City garage restroom and security, but with the bar opening, the bar closing, so to respond if in reduction or an increase of hours when needed. From a cleanliness standpoint, we have our YES team out there safely operating and coordinating all the cleaning in the district, as well as our pressure washing company that's doing the intensive pressure washing. So the district's cleanliness is definitely keeping up as normal. And unfortunately, we have seen an uptick of graffiti artists and their activities. So we've been trying to stay on top of that as much as we possibly can. Moving forward in regard to major infrastructure projects, we're pushing along the Archway Light project with TECO, and we're excited to hear that just even as of yesterday, we learned that an archway has been fabricated by the contractor. So we're actually going to be able to see what an actual fabricated archway that will span one will look like as it goes all the way down 7th Avenue from Newfield to 26th Street. And then we also are moving forward with the completion of the 7th Avenue streetscape as far as 24th to 26th Street. That streetscape portion has yet to be completed, and so we are working with consultants to be able to pick one through contract administration to hire somebody to complete that, and that'll complete 7th Avenue streetscape. And then we have a subgroup of one of our committees that is assessing our brick street. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to bring some bricks back in the district. So we have a subcommittee that would like to eventually talk to administration in regards to putting some emphasis on bringing some bricks back into the district. And then we have 2 programs that we've released for soliciting applications. And one is the fiscal year 21 Special Events Co-Sponsorship Grant Program. We are still moving forward with it. It's out on the street for applications to be received by next Monday, July 27th. So we'll be reviewing those on August the 13th. Anyone that submits a special event co-sponsorship grant application will be awarding those at our August 13th committee meeting. And then the second one is the Ybor Marketing and Communications RFP. We have released it, and so our existing one is expiring at the end of this fiscal year. So we are having to put out a new RFP, and we have a deadline of August the 6th at 2:30 for it. So either we'll be staying with our existing firm, or we will be, looking at the other prospects that come in and determining who we have as our marketing firm. Probably October, that would be coming to City Council for approval. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, John Bigfelder.
You recognize Mr. Bigfelder.
Thank you. According, one quick comment in regard to the bricks. I couldn't help but notice over in the armature project, and the Heights CRA over there, there's some huge piles and stacks of city bricks that were obviously pulled up from city streets, and they're being stockpiled over there near the bridge. And perhaps there might be some extra. And I believe they are city property, even though the developers, probably storing them over there for us. But, maybe somebody's taking a look at that, or maybe you could check with the armature folks and see if they might have any extra to share.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Fallon?
Yep, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the East Tampa CRA.
All right, good morning, Ed Johnson, East Tampa CRA Manager. The first slide that's up is reflecting the work of our environmental detective, Detective Curtis Williams, who has been extremely active since he started in this new job for him in mid-May. The following there on the slide represents his highlights for the month of June. As you can see, he's been very involved in illegal dumping sites. Some of those cases have been resolved. In some cases, others are continuing. He initiated a code complaint at 3201 North Nebraska Avenue, which is the company of Beal Tire, for excessive accumulations and other illegal dumping activities taking place at that location. Also, there was a vacant home at 2802 North 21st Street, which was taken off the hearing schedule sometime back because of COVID, but now has since been put back on the agenda, and that property has been vacant. It's been utilized by vagrants for some time, and it really needs to be demolished. Next one up is, you look on the upper right-hand corner, there's a photograph of our folks removing some debris over in the Northview Hills territory. Detective Williams actually made an arrest of an individual that he has been tracking for some time, that has been dumping somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.6 tons of trash in that community. And he's been arrested and has been awaiting trial in that particular case. Collected numerous night signs all over the place. The other major problem that we're experiencing right now is inoperable vehicles that are being collected along vacant properties and along roadways, and even red tagging a lot of these inoperable vehicles to get them off our street. And again, he's responded to with one of our code officers. The photograph on the bottom right-hand side of the slide, you can see the accumulation, abandoned cars and motorhomes and other trash at the property located at 3001 East Curtis. And they've been given 1 week to clear that property and the alleyway behind it or face criminal charges. Next slide, please. Councilman Goods was very interested in our tree trimming program. in a report that you had the $100,000 funding that we set aside for a tree trimming program where residents have the opportunity to have up to $2,500 to remove trees that present a safety situation. The single family residential program. I'm here to tell you it's been very well received. I've had over, to date, I've had over 400 phone calls and emails, folks inquiring about the program. Unfortunately, a lot of the calls that we got were outside the CRA boundary, having to go spend the time and go through explaining to folks, the CRA boundary and the restrictions that we have as to where we can spend those dollars has taken up a lot of time. But to date, this slide says I have 15 residents approved for processing. This slide was prepared, obviously, a week or so ago. I can tell you right now I have over 75 applications that have already gone through and qualified and approved, that we are now in the process of moving to the next step of getting these applications in the hands of our contractors to be able to make contact with the residents, to be able to start the quote process and begin removing some of these trees. I'm really wanted to put a shout out to our code enforcement folks, our neighborhood community affairs, and also our equal business opportunity department. They've partnered with us to assist us in getting the word out in case of neighborhood and community affairs folks. They've actually taken applications to residents that had limited ability to use computers and the online system, to be able to put applications in their hands, fill them out, and bring them back to our office, where we're in the process of reviewing those as we speak. So I just want to put a shout out to Janelle McGregor and her folks that are assisting us in being able to deliver this program the way it should be delivered. Next slide, please.
Mr. Johnson, let me just chime in right here, if you would, in reference to the tree program. I'm very excited that we are getting those numbers in, but I want to make sure that I know the neighborhood team is helping, code enforcement is out there trying to get the message up. But I just want to make sure that we're looking at some of our seniors to make sure that they're getting in, because I've got a couple of calls, and you're right, we've taken some, my AE and some others have taken some stuff to our seniors. So when I look at on some of the social media pages, I see that certain areas have a high volume, especially our Southeast Sonoma Heights group, which is great. We want everybody involved, because it's all part of our CRA. But I want to make sure that middle core, especially when I drive by and I see the cemetery, I don't know what the legal process would be, but we have trees, big trees that are falling in that cemetery at 22nd and MLK. And that's one of the major points for that community, is that cemetery, Memorial Park. I don't know if we can put some money to get those trees removed, and possibly that money then be assessed to the lien on that property. I know there's some issues going on there, but it is an eyesore when you have these large trees that are sitting on people's tombstones and headstones. So I'm hoping that you can go back and get with legal in the CC board to look at that cemetery to try to get some of those big old trees that are falling all over the place. But I thank you for the work that's being put in by those other entities that are helping us. And I just want to make sure that we're getting the word and the message out to those people who really need those trees removed. I yield back to you, Mr. Council.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You're exactly correct. And we have been paying particular attention to a lot of our inner core neighborhoods to make sure that they're getting the message. And one of the things that we've been able to do with the assistance of our other departments is code enforcement taking a proactive stance, now looking at some of these neighborhoods that they see every day, and to be able to make sure that the residents that they're interacting with on a daily basis understand what the program is and have the ability to get an application and get them for review. We're starting to see a lot of those neighborhoods applications come coming in with the help of code enforcement and neighborhood community affairs folks, actually talking to folks in the community to be able to make sure they understand the program. So I thank you. And as far as the cemetery goes, I did reach out to our code enforcement and neighborhood enhancement folks about the trees, especially the big one that was really noticeable there, 22nd Street, that had actually, I don't know if it was struck by lightning or what, but it was split right in half, and it's really an eyesore. And they tell me that they are aggressively on this. They're working, obviously, through our legal process because of the situation that we have there at the cemetery. So they're going to try to get that handled as soon as legally possible.
Thank you, sir.
Next slide. It would be our indirect. You recall the 34th Street Safety Project from Columbus Drive up to East Hillsborough is progressing very, very, very well. COVID hasn't impeded them from the work effort there. The roundabouts that are being constructed at 21st Avenue, Lake Avenue, and Osborne are going very well. The 21st Avenue intersection and roundabout has been completed, and that intersection is open and operational at this time. And they're moving pretty quickly. I believe they're going to be ahead of schedule on the Lake Avenue and Osborne roundabout. Next slide, please. This is our notable events section. You see we're still moving with the update of the East Tampa Strategic Action Plan. Update, our contractor is currently organizing this meeting for a kickoff meeting, which would be held with the East Tampa CAC in August, the August meeting. And then we'll discuss how we're going to go about having a larger community meeting, hopefully sometime in September or October. Hopefully COVID reduces itself a little bit so we can have one without having to do a virtual meeting. But we'll address that as time goes on. We're still in daily involvement with our EOC. I'm one of the members of ESF 18. Of course, this is hurricane season, and we want to make sure that we have adequate staff from economic development that CRA to be able to meet the challenges of our communities. We're continuing to meet with private sector developers, discussing potential housing projects that are constantly ongoing. We continue to hold virtual community advisory committee meetings and subcommittee meetings throughout the course of this COVID engagement. Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me a couple of more minutes, I've got a couple of other updates of interest that I wasn't able to include in the PowerPoint presentation was made, but I just got some of this information just recently. But I'd like to inform you that Mr. Barton of Safe and Sound, who you asked me to get with, he has some ideas about some program that he could utilize some existing CRA funds from to be able to create a program for youth employment with utilizing our local business entities. Mr. Barton and our chair, Ms. Goodley, have had conversation, and Mr. Barton is prepared to make a presentation at the August CAC meeting with some ideas around the programmatic side of what he would like to propose as an opportunity. Then after that discussion, those program ideas will then be provided to Mr. Massey for evaluation and consideration for a formal program. The next one is our down payment assistance program. That, as far as I'm concerned, has been extremely successful. We continue to collaborate with our housing community development folks, offering the down payment assistance and the educational workshops. And I'm here to report that the program is scheduled, on the workshop side, is scheduled to conduct new workshops on August the 1st, August the 8th, the 15th, 2nd, and the 29th of August. And there were 15 seats that would be available for the continuation of our educational program for down payment assistance. And those workshops will run from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and they will be held at the Housing Community Development offices on Lemon Street. And I was also told that those 15 positions have already been filled. So there are residents that have already signed up for those 15 slots, and they're ready to go. In addition, under this program, the advisory committee at its last meeting approved expanding the $15,000 down payment assistance under this program to $50,000 to provide additional affordability and equity. The program will be amended by legal and presented for your approval at the August CRA board. The next one is our housing rehab program, and this is one that we've allocated $500,000 towards, and we haven't seen much movement with the program because it was developed in collaboration with our Housing and Community Development's existing housing rehab program, and unfortunately, it was placed on hold due to COVID and the inability of residents from entering the Lemon Street offices. So we haven't had much traction. So as a result of that, at the last CAC meeting, the CAC has asked that we explore creating a new program directly funding the housing rehab organizations that are in our community. So we will have some further updates on this at our August meeting with you and the CRA board. So those are some additional updates that I just want to make sure that you guys were aware of before we lose control of the number of activities that are really happening at the CRA at the present time. So that concludes my report. Any questions? I'll be glad to answer them.
Any board members have any questions? If none, I have a few, Mr. Johnson. Again, I want to thank the CEC for listening to me in reference to that tree rehab. I think it's so vital and so important. And again, I failed to mention that my aide had been traveling, delivering applications and so forth. And I had some time ago talked about, South Tampa and others, as you drive down their roads and you can see how nice and pruned the trees are. For any community to survive, it has to have that feel good, what I call it, that they feel good where they're living at. And I also would like the CEC to explore with that tree program, you have to expand it, because it is working apparently, that you look at the streets in these towns. Some of these streets have the limbs that are hanging all the way over into the roadway from both sides, scratching cars, coming down, and that's why a lot of times we have all these trees that fall in the middle of the road, and we have to have our city staff go out there to try to clear it up. But what happens is we get some of the road cleared, but now you still got most of the tree on the homeowner's property, and of course they don't have the money to do the rest of the work. So we can explore also looking at some of those streets in East Tampa that the trees are very bad in the streets, getting those trimmed. I think that's very important for the beautification of East Tampa, number one. Number two, as we talk to the rehab, I talked many times again about the rehab program. Looking at these new tops, again, beautification is everything in a community. And I'm glad that we are now addressing that again. I'm hoping that there can be some virtual meetings ASAP, because we need to start looking at beautifying communities and making sure that those who don't know, and again, it goes back to marketing again. My friend, good member, Ms. Dinko said, we've got to get the word, because people just don't know. That means putting door tags. That means getting a marketing person to be on TV, getting with local media, having our own person to say, we have a program here for a CRA. If you need your roof done, and these are our guidelines. And I'm glad, like I told before, we don't need to add that money to city dollars, because then you get into all the federal issues. People can't qualify. And if you have your own money, you can do what you need to do and get rid of some of the bureaucracy with the money, so people can be able to move forward. So I'm glad that we're trying to move on some of these issues, and hopefully, the CRA will again start moving very, very quickly. I yield back unless you have anything else to comment on, sir.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
completes my
Chair.
report.
And we'll move
Excuse me?
on. Go ahead.
Does someone need to be recognized from the board members? Okay, Ms. Penlon, you can continue, please.
Okay, then we'll move on to the downtown CRA report.
Thank you. Morning, this is Rob Rosner, downtown Channel District, Tampa Heights and Central Park. We'll start with downtown this morning. The first of our activities is the Tampa Convention Center renovations. We were on schedule to do the interviews and other portions of that in March through May. Obviously, COVID had moved that forward. We were able to get those completed on the 17th, and I believe that Skanska was the winning team, and I'm following through with our contract admin to do the first portions of that work. As we put in through that the early work that's portions that were already designed or just need to be purchased early on, like long lead items, like elevator parts and that sort of thing. Between 11 and 16 weeks lead time on those, we want to go get those done so that they're available during the height of construction. COVID's a mixed blessing. We're lower on revenues there, but we have this opportunity to kind of get things done without disturbing customers, which is kind of a mixed blessing, obviously. But moving on, the Riverwalk improvements at the Straz has begun. It began a couple of weeks ago. On the agenda today is an amendment to rectify some of the unforeseen conditions, some additional work, and things that relate to all that work that's going on between the roadway, the Riverwalk improvements, some increased safety measures for cameras and other power improvements there that will make it much safer for people to use the Riverwalk and make that a much more safe and pleasant experience on the Riverwalk. Next slide, please. Water Street Tampa, our indirect activities is Water Street Tampa. JW Marriott is on track for completion prior to Super Bowl. The building's planned to be turned over sometime in September, with the opening of taking the first people in the hotel in November. The 815 Water Street Towers, they are progressing. They're planning to take down one of their two cranes. It's being dismantled. As you can see, if you're able to be downtown right now, the next phase of HRI's hotel that's next door to City Hall here, they're literally right now dismantling their crane, and it's got the street closed to do so. So there's a lot of buildings that are moving forward. The 1001 office building and garage next door have both been topped out structurally. They're moving forward with the interior renovations, and the other portions keep going with that. The residential tower on the H1 block is ahead of the construction schedule. That's just north of the Morsani School of Medicine. Planners are also working on phase 3 of the master plan infrastructure. We've completed multiple pieces of phase 1. Their phase 2 and their list of things is not necessarily related to master infrastructure, but mainly for getting buildings online. So that phase 3, what we're referring to, is that portion that's kind of north of Cumberland. And so that portion that kind of goes from Cumberland to Findlay, and we're working on that plan now. And staff and other people are involved in the implications of that and estimating that kind of work now. So we've been meeting with SPP regularly on that. Moving on to the Riverwalk Place Tower, Two Roads Development. Has submitted their plans, and I'm not sure if you saw it in the Tampa Bay Business Journal, but they presented a new set of plans and renderings that was done. It's going to be a new 37-story mixed-use tower. Right now, they're titling it as the Ashley Tower until they come up with a new name besides Riverwalk Place. And so we're working with them to make sure that the public realm and the pieces that were part of the original plan still make sense, and that those things are being addressed. There will be activation of the Riverwalk through retail on the Riverwalk level, as well as having access from Ashley for their garage and other pieces. So we care about the whole experience of what that like down in that area, and working with them on that. Next slide, please. Indirect activity, the Henry Tower, which we told you about before, which is the Tyler residences. Devon has progressed significantly on the vertical floors. They're getting very close to topping out. It's about a $100 million project with about 188 units, apartments for 537 residents, has attached parking, state-of-the-art security systems, and the development is projected to be open in the fall of 2021. So that concludes downtown. Is there any questions? If not, can we move to the next, please? Channel District CRA. You know, each month I've been giving you updates on where we are with the project teams, and we've been meeting with stakeholders and making sure each and every property owner that's adjacent to any of these projects are involved, and we hear their issues, comments, and also make them aware of the public engagement piece that we've had for both the design and for the construction piece, and know who to call if there's any issues, especially with disturbance or access to their facilities during reconstruction of some of these streets. So to make it a little simpler, I made a table that is a little easier to see, and with the progress bars, and it's a little easier to digest than the long wordy version I had before. So hopefully this helps you with seeing where we are. As you can tell, we're wrapping up on a lot of the design stuff. We're moving forward with a number of the construction pieces. What you'll see is item B here, which is Channelside Drive. We obviously are finished with that design. We're doing some tweaks. We've had some last minute meetings with the port to right-size some issues that came up around the roundabout, and that's all getting done now. So that project is underway. They're right now doing shop drawings and for buying materials and for storm utility last minute verifications of before starting work. So that $8 million portion of that project is moving forward. And we go to the next slide, please. Madison Street Park, the park's complete. We had a soft opening, and residents are enjoying that right now. When the pandemic is lifted, we'd love to have you all come out and do an official opening, and looking forward to that. Indirect activities, Channel Club 2, which is the old Williams oil site, they're moving forward. We're working through a development agreement for the relocation of some electric transmission poles and undergrounding some of the distribution line. And I've been working with legal to wrap that up. So that'll come at a city council meeting at a future date. Kate Wells is our city attorney that's helping through that development agreement, and we continue to work with that. The neighbor across the street is the Daniel Corporation, which is on the north side of Twigs, on the west side of 12. The former DeMarce parcel, I spoke with them yesterday. They are in for permitting. They would like to be in the ground in October, and we're wrapping up some of the discussions about the same kinds of things we are with Channel Club, about rerouting some power, as well as verifying the design of 12th Street to make sure there's development. Our plans are well coordinated. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, any questions on Channel District before I move to Tampa Heights?
Yes, Dingfelder.
You're recognized, sir. You're recognized.
Thanks, sir. Rob, two questions, one on Channelside, one on downtown. In regard to Channelside, Mr. Stoltenberg indicated that there's a need for a lot of things, including a children's playground. Do any of our existing parks have children's playground equipment? And if not, is there an opportunity? Have we identified any potential small parcel to build a children's playground? And then,
yeah.
And then my downtown question is a broader question. Is in the COVID environment, which who knows how long that's gonna last. And also with people not necessarily going into work and working from home, do we have a sense of the office market softening? And and are people talking about that? Are you seeing that with commercial realtors and commercial real estate prices and that sort of thing? Because obviously that's going to have a tax impact down the road if that happens.
Okay, so let me take the first of the two questions for the Channel District, and I'll follow up on the office question for downtown. So the first question for the Channel District is that the overall plan was to have 4 major parks. If you'll see that Michelle will present in a little bit about some projections and things we've been talking with the CACs, is to have a park that's near Sparkman Wharf in conjunction with, a connection to the Riverwalk at some future date. Connect Okeechobee Park underneath the beneficial bridge. We're calling it Garrison Park because it's adjacent to Garrison Street, but we don't have a name for that park yet. But that park has not had its full discussion about what should be programmed there. We've just identified that as a partnership with SPP, who wants that to be a park just as much as we want it to be a park, but they currently have access to that land, and we're going through that process for that. We have, each time we've designed and built any of these parks, we've had a very strong public engagement piece of what should go in these parks. And through that process in 2015 for programming Madison Street Park, we have well-documented process that was done by the Parks Department to make sure that that park had all the pieces in it. Now that park does have climbing equipment and ball courts, and it has a multi-use court. There's, I believe there's even a shuffleboard. So that one is more of a play activity area. It is not your traditional swing sets and jungle gym type park. But the residents at those times didn't ask for those things, and we provided what was asked for. The Madison Street Park, at the time that one was Washington Street Park, when that one was programmed, access to dog parks was a big deal. The whole idea of having pets as their children there is a big deal. People are very passionate about how they deal with their pets. Now we are starting to see families starting to grow, and that demographic is beginning to change. And obviously, any new parks or any work we do on parks, we should include any of the new demographics. Absolutely, we should have, listen to the community and try to provide those facilities. Now we have that opportunity down at Garrison Park, which is one that's being negotiated and talked about. But beyond that, we built the parks that were in the plan to build. There was supposed to be 4 sub-districts, 1 park in each sub-district, and we're doing that as we speak. So again, we're happy to accommodate. So I'm going to move on to your next question, which was about the office market. What we're hearing in downtown is that the form of offices is changing. We don't think that working virtually will overtake or kill the market in any way, but we will see that there will be more choices, and the form of how offices are outfitted are being talked about a lot more. So besides what we're doing here at City Hall, where we're putting up a lot of plexiglass to minimize some of the interactions with spreading COVID, offices are starting to change from open office environments with tighter cubicles to areas that have more plexiglass. The space requirements between desks are changing. The materials that people are starting to do are more cleanable and less fabric. So we're seeing a move there, but there is still a need for people to continue to interact and to still have office space. Yes, there's some faith in the market because I won't say it's fickle, but it does react a little quicker because people's perceptions of should I rent or shouldn't I rent still is out there, but there's still many, many businesses out there that are still looking for more office space than we have here. And through the economic development side of the world, we are still hearing lots of people saying we want more office space, and the demand's still there. It's just the form and maybe some of the concessions of how people negotiate their leases becoming a little different. obviously that parking's becoming less. There's some, let's say 15 to 20% of the people are now going virtual. Parking demand is going to change, obviously, which is a good thing. And then just the idea of people working a little more independently is another thought. And I think that, to be honest with you, the market was about 10 years away. Now it's about 2 years away. So the virtual world of doing things was kind of pushed to the forefront because of COVID. So with that, I'll end that comment.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up, in regard to that Garrison Park that might be looking for a name down the road, if we get to that point, I'm going to suggest we consider Linda Salsena, because as many may recall, Linda was really one of the founders and creators, working with Ken Stoltenberg and others, Andy, et cetera, of the Channel Side District at all. And as a former councilwoman and a CRA member, I don't think she's been honored for her probably 20 years of city council service. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir. You can continue, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. We'll move on with the Tampa Heights Riverfront CRA. We have no direct activities other than working with the Tampa Heights Community Development District, the CDD, which is what our agreement's with. So with that, our first thing was to do the annual payment of the qualified debt that's in the development agreement for the CRA. So we made a payment of $1,044,000 for work that's been done so far. They've submitted that. We've worked with a very similar process as we have with SPP about them showing us their bonding, their actual work done, invoices, all that was been looked through, and we were able to get that processed in June for them to make one of their qualified debt payments in July. So on an annual basis, the 74% that's listed in the agreement, we will be showing that in the budget as a line item. It'll be listed as CDD qualified debt, and it'll show the 74% of the TIF that is to be paid to continue to do that. The reason we haven't done it in past years is because there wasn't enough work or enough pieces in place for us to get there, and we were able to get that done. We had intended to be doing this in April, but COVID had pushed that up to June. So that's in on that report. With Soho Capital, the first of the two roundabouts is under construction. I went out there about a week ago. They're about 80% done with one of the first roundabouts on Palm, near, I believe, Oak or Highland, I can't remember which street, but it's towards the east end of the development. The Heights Market is working with food vendors to remain open and they're attracting business effectively, even though they're still having a restriction in place. They're finalizing an easement with Tico's Transformers and Switchgears. I've been working with Adam Harden with that in the past 2 weeks. They're also coordinating with other utility companies such as Verizon and Frontier. The small cell issue that there's a lot of poles being popped up around here for Super Bowl and the whole 5G network. So we've been actively working to minimize the impact of that in our renovations of our streetscapes and placement of these poles. Some of them are not well placed, and we will be meeting with them kind of as a town hall meeting this afternoon that's being led by Carol Post. Moving on, the Heights Union buildings are working to complete the exterior cladding. The windows are about done. They're just finishing more of the exteriors. It's looking very good. Next slide, please. Does anybody have any questions before I leave Tampa Heights CRA? If not, I'll go ahead and move on with Central Park. With Central Park, the demolition of the blighted building that we had mentioned and we got approval for, we did get the requisition and the PO cut for them to begin that demolition. I believe that if it hasn't been demolished this week, I believe it'll be between now and the middle of August. I'm not sure, I haven't been by that particular street the past couple of weeks due to COVID, but they're on track to continue with that. Indirect, the Tampa Housing Authority is negotiating for Lot 10. Actually, I think since this, I think they've already finished that. So there's two mixed-use developments that are going in on Encore. Went by just yesterday and saw that they've got a serious portion of Lot 9 garage started. They're doing the precast work on that. They're listing that as called the Independent at Encore, and then the other building, which is Lot 10 here. And forgive me, it may be Lot 8. That's the one that's been sold, but Lot Legacy is the other building that they're doing. And as I drove by there yesterday, I saw that they were doing the preliminary work for foundation. So it's a little further than I expected, but that's excellent news that this is getting developed as planned. So the Independent at Encore is the Transwestern. As I said, they broke ground on the garage. Well, they've gotten up quite a bit, so it's looking very good. Next slide, please. This is the building from that's being demolished. I didn't know if I was able to provide that at last term, so we wanted to share it with you in case you hadn't seen it. So that if it's not demolished already, it should be very soon. I'll check on that this week. Next slide, please. On to Michelle. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions before I sign off?
Yes, sir, Roger. I didn't see anything, looking at my notes here, I didn't see anything as it relates to Kid Mason. That's a situation I've been talking about for a while as well, and wanted to continue to keep updates on that.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, Kid Mason, we worked with the Parks Department, and they did pick a consultant. We had a kickoff meeting for that. And Brad Suter, I think he's still on vacation right now, but I would be happy to have him reach out to you and give you an update of where we are with that consultant. But we had a very good kickoff meeting, talked about the goals and plans, the expectations, and what we wanted to get done. They were going to do a survey of the building in that first round. I don't know how long that was going to take, and start doing the preliminary work. So I've not checked with Brad on that particular topic in the past few weeks, but I will check in with him.
Just bring it back at the next CRA meeting in your notes, if you will, so all the council members can be aware of the project.
Excellent. No problem. Happy to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Michelle?
Good morning, Chair and CRA board members. For our department updates, I wanted to update you on where we are on staffing. I am very happy and proud to announce that Mike Callahan from Land Use and Development at the end of August will be transitioning into our department with some of our personnel changes that we've been having. Mike is well versed and had a big role in a lot of the developments that have already been happening and the history of our developments and the Channel District and downtown CRAs with the developments we've had in Tampa Heights. And so he will be coming in on a full-time basis as a CRA employee to be assisting with overseeing our side of a lot of these projects as we move forward over the next couple of years. So we're very glad to have Mike on board, that he can hit the ground running with us, and his learning curve regarding our communities is minimal. Secondly, on our West Tampa and Drew Park manager, they have accepted the position and they are waiting for confirmation of passing all the background checks. They will then give notice to their job, and as soon as that happens, I will send out to all of the CRA board members and the West Tampa and Drew Park CAC members their full resume, and we will be able to introduce them at our CRA meeting in August and also at our CAC meetings in August. And I'm very excited. I'm pins and needles waiting for HR to let me know that all that background has passed and we're ready to go. Pending that, we do expect that that person will start on and around August 10th. The other two positions, the project person for the Drew Park in West Tampa, right now that is a memo waiting on the Chief of Staff's desk. And we hope that that will move forward early Monday and that HR will be making that offer next week. And the other position that would be the dedicated project specialist for East Tampa, that is currently being worked on by HR to make that job offer and complete those negotiations. So I hope either by tomorrow or early next week, I'll know where we are with that candidate. So again, by the end of August, I will hope that all four of these positions will be full. filled, and we'll be ready to hit the ground running. We're very excited, and I can't wait to introduce them to you all. As we've mentioned, and you've been going through on the city side, we are in our FY21 budget cycle. We come back to you formally with our draft budgets on September 10th. I have now had one-on-one discussions with all of you leading into that cycle. We have provided you the draft budgets as recommended by all of your CACs. There have been some slight tweaks here and there, but just nominal amounts of money. So those final numbers, again, will be presented at the September 10th meeting. As you work through and digest these budgets, our CRA managers and myself are available between now and September 10th to answer any questions you may have. And hopefully, as you review those budgets, you will notice there are a lot more marketing dollars in our CRA budgets for FY21. And so all of our CAC members listening will be glad to hear that you're supporting that. And some of the items you may not see it directly listed as marketing, but they are there. So for example, in the housing rehab program dollars in West Tampa, there was an extra $25,000 put in that budget to do things just as Chair Goods mentioned, having door hangers and doing a full out marketing program to get the word about that program out on the street, out to the people that need it, and to be much more proactive once the subcommittee finalizes what that program looks like. So we're very excited for our marketing opportunities in our CRAs. At our last quarterly meeting of our CAC chairs that we had in person prior to COVID, one of the items for discussion was how to do a more coordinated effort of marketing and having the ability to have marketing services for all CACs and have it a little bit less as a ad-needed, ad hoc hodgepodge of marketing services. So that is one thing that is a high priority for the CACs as we move forward over the next 12 months. On the One Tampa Business Relief Grant, for round 2 of the One Tampa grant, as of late Tuesday, there had been 176 approved grants across the, for all the approved grants, and 104 are still in processing. They're moving them out and trying to get the checks out on the street. I believe a lot of you have seen a lot of the media covering that, the smiling faces of very happy business owners when they receive that $2,000 check. I do not have yet, because again, they're trying diligently to get these applications processed as fast as possible to get the checks out there by hopefully next week. And as they complete that last round of reviews, we will start to get all those addresses and the amounts, and we are able to then audit that and verify all the addresses within our participating CRAs. And at the August meeting on August 13th, we'll report back to you how much of those dollars and grant amounts will be charged to the CRA interest and what the balance of interest looks like, so that as we go into the September 10th CRA budget cycle discussion, we will have what that balance and remaining interest is. So those are the main ones. If there's any questions about that, then I'll continue with some of the other general updates. I just didn't want to keep going on a long list and not give you a chance to ask questions.
Ms. Vallone, one question, and I should have caught you earlier in reference to the marketing. I know each CRA is looking to do some more marketing, but I'm just wondering, would it be more cost effective if the CRA had just one major company to do the marketing for all the CRAs in a more cost effective manner?
Now that we know we have CRA support and direction to look at that, that is definitely something we will look at, whether it makes sense to, you know, like with our newsletter, we went out and hired one company that was flexible enough to provide us the needs for the different CRAs for our newsletters. So we will start evaluating whether it should be a company or, as Councilman Dingfelter said, whether we should have that in-house. So we'll start evaluating that and looking at what makes sense for all our CRAs. So we'll definitely get moving on that.
Thank you.
So I'll continue with some of our updates as Ed handled some of these. To let you know what we're coming back to you with on August 13th CRA board meeting, there had been a request about a community benefits ordinance and Morris will be coming back to you with that on 8/13 to report back. We are having our East Tampa CAC elections in September, and we have 17 candidates that will be during that election for 6 slots. So we are very excited about all of those candidates, about the interest, and about the re-engagement of our East Tampa community. And again, on August 13, we will bring you all of those 17 names for your ratification of the slate, a candidate list. As Ed mentioned on Memorial Cemetery, we are still in a legal process with the cemetery owners. The city has to go through a legal process in order to go onto the property and then mow, and we have to follow that process every time we go into mow and address the upkeep. Parks and Rec and codes are currently getting prices and trying to find a company that can now address the trimming of the trees and addressing the tree issues in the cemetery. And we have talked with the East Tampa CAC about that, and depending on where those costs come in, the East Tampa CAC may help with that one-time cleanup of the trees for right now. Once the legal issues regarding the cemetery are addressed, then we can start having more formal planning about the future of that cemetery. So right now, the biggest holdup is the legal hoops we have to go through, the timelines that we have to wait for before we can act, the notices we have to give before we can actually go on the property to do that maintenance. So it is slow, but it is happening. We did have it mowed and cleaned up as far as the grass and so forth before the 4th of July holiday. So the city and city staff has been very cognizant of the role the cemetery plays in the East Tampa community and is doing their best to try and meet the needs of the community while we are in. And with that, as I go through all my notes, I believe I've covered all the updates for our department right now under our staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, this is Carlson. I have one.
You recognize, sir.
Ms. Van Loon, sorry if I missed you saying this, but just so everybody knows, you rescheduled the discussion about spending more money on affordable housing, correct?
Yes, I apologize. We will be coming back to you on the September 10th, and it will be an item along with the budget. We will report back on the request to look at a potential of spending 30% of CRA budgets on affordable housing. So that will be scheduled as part of all the budget discussions on the September 10th meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make sure because that was something we had pushed earlier, and it doesn't mean we have to spend 30%, but the idea is if you look at 163, one of the primary things they say we should spend money on is affordable housing, and this just looks at the possibility of spending more. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? This one chime in? Ms. Bellone.
Yes, ma'am. Or yes, sir.
On that note with Mr. Carlson, you know, affordable housing, that word I just really don't like at times. To me, the terminology of workforce housing, I've looked at that definition and I've looked at the annual income where they say workforce housing. And to me, you leave people out because when I look at workforce housing and some of the professions of workforce housing don't align. But to me, you look at terminologies, and I think a new terminology has to begin when you talk about essential workers housing. Those people at the Burger King, the Walmart, and so forth, that needs to be in the conversation because to me, workforce housing, when you talk about nurses and fire, police officers, and some of the other professions that is saying workforce housing, but you leave out that bottom portion. So I think we got to come up with a terminology for that other percentile to make sure that they're included in all the conversations, especially when you're talking about housing in all of the CRAs. And from what I see, each CRA has money, some have more than others. And I think once we get this community business ordinance with Mr. Massey kind of worked out as well, we need to make sure that we're talking to these developers to make sure we can put money and ask, they're private people, and ask, can we somehow put money in that to subsidize whatever to be able to get an equitable living for everybody in those communities. So I just want you to be looking at that, making sure that we have everyone inclusive in the plan, especially when you're talking about this new percent, making sure that when new development is coming in, even if we're purchasing something or a contract that has something built, that we have everyone inclusive of housing. And I just think that bottom percentile is kind of left out. I understand that the West River with housing, the waiting list is already full. So we know there's a need of housing, and that's what I'm hearing. So we've got to make sure we've got some plans in each one of those CRAs downtown, channel side, and for all of them to make sure that we have a process for essential housing, what I call, to be able to help all people get in and with those dollars, because they have a substantial amount of money that they can help get things moving. I yield back to you, Ms. Bellon.
Thank you, sir. As we develop the individual programs and multiple, as you mentioned, we have to address various groups of people and their needs. So especially in West Tampa and East Tampa, the different types of programs that they're rolling out, we'll certainly look at that terminology. For our reporting purposes, because of what state statute 163 requires of us and requires us to put actually in the budgets and in our annual report, we do have to, by their requirements, report on affordable housing. So in the budgets themselves and in our official documents, we will have to refer to it as affordable housing, but in the program names and how we market it and what we call it, we will certainly make sure that that terminology is more reflective of the type of programs and the constituencies that we're aiming them at.
Thank you.
This is Carlson again. Mr. Chair, I agree with you. And if you look at the mayor's plans put together, Carol Post and her team and the community, they use housing affordability, which is a slight difference, but it means that it's including all those others. And I know the mayor and her office are trying to work with the Tampa Chamber and others. And so we would be, CRA, if we agreed to do any of this, would be a part of supporting that larger effort. Thank you.
Ms. Bellon?
That concludes our staff report.
Item number 3.
So again, this is Michelle Van Loan. For item number 3, we are responding to the CRA board motion made at the last CRA board meeting. The purpose of our report, as discussed earlier, was to come back to the CRA board and let you know that here's where the status is on the Channel District CRA, so that you have this information in front of you to better effectuate your discussion among yourselves and questions, and able to make fully informed policy decisions moving forward. If we can bring up the PowerPoint for item number 3. Okay, we'll start with that one. Sue Lynn, can we bring up the actual one that says 3A?
I don't have the one for 3A.
That's the one that came through to council PowerPoint last night. You got 2 emails. You got one that went to council PowerPoint for 3A and 4A.
Yeah, I didn't receive that.
Okay, so we'll talk you through it. The original motion asked that staff to appear and provide a report regarding a plan to begin drawing down the Channel District CRA funds for fiscal year 21, and also then complete the drawdown in fiscal year 22. And then the second half of the motion addresses the issue of if that any money went back to the general fund, what would happen to that? We will not be discussing that part of our the motion, as that is an issue that has to be addressed at the city council level. So we're strictly addressing, you know, the current status of the CRA, Channel District CRA, and hopefully to provide you information as you move forward. If you all can indulge me 1 second, if I can email this PowerPoint really quickly to Suling. I don't think this is going to be effective without showing the public also the same information that you had before you. So if you can indulge me for 60 seconds to forward this to Suling, would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We've got that up. So if we go to the second slide. So there you can see the actual motion that was made. So we are going to address the Channel District CRA, their current status, what was asked of them and their hopes and original vision, and where we are today to provide you again that platform for decision making. There's also the question of if any changes were made, what would be that process? And so we're going to turn it over to Morris Massey, our CRA attorney, to give you that overview and introduction to what would be necessary should the CRA board at any point decide to make whatever a proposed change might be. Next slide.
Morning, board members. This is Morris Massey, the CRA attorney, to talk about the legal authority and process in regards to both your motions, actually, and this would be addressed for both items 3 and 4. And I do want to address briefly the second part of both motions. And again, let me just kind of restate my understanding of the motions that we were asked to research and come back to you and report on today. You've asked whether the city's tax increment contribution to the downtown CRA can be capped, and the Channel District CRA actually be terminated early, and whether the tax increment funds that would have otherwise been used in either of those community redevelopment areas, but for the cap and early termination, then be redirected to East Tampa, Sulphur Springs, and Uptown. And relative to the last portion, and Ms. Van Loan did make this statement, but I want to make it clear, the CRA board cannot legally direct those funds to East Tampa, Sulphur Springs, or Uptown for a couple of reasons. First, part of the tax increment funds in the Channel District community redevelopment area is derived from Hillsborough County taxes. So if that CRA was terminated early, that part of the TIF would go back to the county and would be subject to the Board of County Commissioners budgeting process. The city would not see that money at all. Second, the city's share of the TIF in either the downtown or the Channel District CRAs would go to into the city's general revenue fund and would have to be budgeted as part of the city's annual budget process. So we can't legally link those two items. I just want to make that clear as you go forward with your discussion. Obviously, this body, when it meets the city council, you all do approve the annual budget and you do have the ability to make changes in the budget, but the way our budget process works is the administration presents the budget and then you all have the opportunity to make changes as we go through the budget process. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that I clarified that. Then relative to the issue of whether it's legally possible for the downtown CRA to be capped and the Channel District CRA to be terminated early, the simple answer from a legal perspective is yes, I think it can. The process is a little bit complicated, and it is a process, and I do want to talk about the legal process and framework to do both of those items. First, as I think most of you realize, we have an interlocal agreement with Hillsborough County dealing with community redevelopment areas. It's a fairly lengthy document that's been amended several times and goes into quite a bit of detail about each separate community redevelopment area. But the sum and substance of the agreement is that we can make changes, I believe, to our community redevelopment plans as long as those changes don't result in expanding the boundaries of any existing community development area or result in increasing the length or duration of the community redevelopment area or the trust fund. Those types of actions would require that we go back to Hillsborough County for approval. If the CRA board and city council decide to move forward with either or both of these motions, I would recommend, though, that we do look at revising the interlocal agreement because there are several terms in the existing interlocal really that will not make sense if we go forward with these motions. So the sum and substance is I believe that we can go forward and do this under the county interlocal agreement. Then secondly, you need to talk about the process that we would have to go through, and what we would have to do is modify the existing community redevelopment plans. And that process begins to be outlined on this slide here. We would draft the language for the amendments and bring it back to the CRA board for your acceptance. And then once you accept that language, then the process would start, and we would have to transmit the proposed draft amendments to the Community Redevelopment Plan to the Planning Commission for consideration, each taxing authority, and to City Council. Because ultimately, any modifications to the Community Redevelopment Plan must be approved by City Council, not the CRA Board. And I know that's the same body, but you'd have to do it in your capacity as City Council. So that's the beginning of the process. If you could go to the next slide. Please advance. So this would begin a number of public hearings. The first public hearing would be before the Planning Commission for a determination as to whether the proposed amendments to both community redevelopment plans are consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Then it would come back to the CRA Board for a formal vote of recommendation for approval of the amendments to the plan to be transmitted to City Council. And then we would have to have a notice public hearing before City Council. And there's some specific notice requirements and statutes that we'd have to comply with. And it would be at a public hearing where public comment and testimony could be taken for you all to ultimately, as City Council, not the CRA Board, to determine whether you're going to approve those changes to the Community Redevelopment Plan. Relative to the Channel District in particular, in terminating it early, I do want to state on the record that under state law, all community redevelopment plans have to have a termination date. Currently, the termination date of the Channel District Community Redevelopment Plan is 2034. So that would require that change, and that would be part of the amendment process that we'd have to go through. I know that I've had some conversations with several of you, and I know some of you have asked, what are the considerations? What's the legal standard? What the Community Redevelopment Act states when you consider a proposed amendment to a community redevelopment plan, the standard is it necessary or desirable, which is a rather broad standard, and makes this largely a policy call. And you've heard some of those policy issues raised this morning under public comment, and they all merit your consideration. I would also encourage you to consider the following, and Michelle is going to go into more detail on some of these aspects, but has the slum and blight conditions identified in the original report when we established these community redevelopment areas been addressed? That's one of the issues I think you have to look at. Secondly, you need to look at whether the goals and projects that have been identified in the community redevelopment plans have been achieved. And kind of as another way of stating that, are there projects and goals remaining that are consistent with CRA statutes accomplished under both plans? And so that's one of the things you need to consider. The Community Redevelopment Act does recognize that third parties that have purchased property or leased property within a community redevelopment area have whatever legal or equitable rights they may have at law if you go ahead and modify those plans. And in that regard, what we do need to be careful of, and from a legal standpoint, is to make sure that the amendment or modification does not affect any outstanding legal contracts, leases, agreements, bonds, other legal obligations or commitments that have been made by the CRA or the city within that area. And so part of what we're going through this morning is, what have we committed to? What have we told folks that we're going to do? What agreements we've entered into, and how these proposed motions might affect those types of how those things might affect what our legal obligations or commitments are. And as long as we've addressed those and we come up with a way to deal with those, and I believe that we can, then it becomes, again, really largely a policy call about whether you want to terminate the Channel District CRA early and or cap the city's contribution to the downtown CRA. I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise I'll turn this over to Michelle to go through some of the details related to the community redevelopment plan for the Channel District, and then a discussion about the downtown plan as well.
Did anyone want to ask Morris any questions on the legal side before we move into a review of the Channel District?
Mr. Chair, I want to just hold my questions for both of them at the end, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir, that'd be fine. For legal, it sounds to me what Mr. Councilor Morris has stated is that we have to make sure that a lot of legal, seems like a lot of legal ramifications if we don't look at this carefully or outstanding obligations. Is that correct, Ms. Morris?
We need to make sure that we've addressed those. I believe, and Michelle's going to walk you through this, what we've committed to and what our plans are and what our projected projects are. I think we can come up with a way to address those in a legal manner. But we need to make sure that that's done, and as long as we appropriately address those, I think you could move forward if you wanted to and make these changes. But we do need to make sure that as part of the amendment process and the way we formulate these amendments, that we've addressed any such legal commitments or commitments that we have made that could be impacted by those motions.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this is Michelle Van Loan again. If we can have the next slide. So as a reminder, when we discussed with the CRA board during some of our planning sessions last fall, the controlling document for any of our CRAs is the Community Redevelopment Plan. So under 163 allows CRAs to do certain things, and they require that in establishing a CRA to adopt a Community Redevelopment Plan, and that plan is your controlling document. One of the comments that Morris just made is, have we met all the goals of our CRP or Community Redevelopment Plan that are still legal? Just because legislation has changed since some of these plans have been adopted. So one of the considerations we'll talk about in the end is, depending on what direction the CRA board and city council decides to go, updating and understanding and maybe bringing current the Community Redevelopment Plan should be part of any consideration should the Strategic Action Plan update move forward. So the Strategic Action Plan by itself, without updating the Community Redevelopment Plan, is much less effective. So as stated in our Community Redevelopment Plans and in Chapter 163, CRAs are created and established to remediate slum and blight. And when the city committed to establishing a CRA, any of the CRAs, the purpose in that commitment is to work on and establish a CRA as a vehicle to remediate that slum and blight. So next slide. We're not going to go through all the words. I just have a couple of slides with a lot of information out there. It is again recapping the Community Redevelopment Plan that we discussed last fall during our planning sessions. I just wanted to point out some of the main goals from the Community Redevelopment Plan and how the Channel District was viewed at that time and addressed. One of the things that the Community Redevelopment Plan does is define Channel District by 4 sub-areas. So one of those sub-areas is called the public waterfront, and that includes the 47 acres of the Port Authority that are along the channel, the Florida Aquarium, the Garrison Seaport, which for us would be what now is known as the Sparkman's Wharf and that land to the east of there. So as you've seen, the aquarium has just done a big capital improvement expansion and update to the aquarium. Sparkman Wharf looks a lot different now than it did in 2004 when the CRA was established. And over time, the Port Authority has done some improvements. They have their headquarters and their main administrative buildings, and their updates over time to their terminals and their master plan that they are working on. So with the public waterfront, we have seen some progress in the public waterfront, and we would consider that still in process. There was a section of land, and we'll have maps in a minute, so you'll be able to see what all this looks like. But there was a section of land north of Twiggs that was referred to as city-sponsored redevelopment. The city owned several acres up in that area, and the Community Redevelopment Plan recommended that the city go out for an RFP or a development process for that acreage, and that is what's now known as the Bell at Channelside.
Bell Channel.
And that is complete, so that goal has been met. They also pointed out in the community redevelopment plan, Meridian Street, and there were big expectations of what Meridian should look like and the purpose it should serve, both from a pedestrian and community standpoint and also from a transportation and traffic standpoint. Meridian Street has been updated to accommodate the kind of traffic coming off the Selman, taking cars and movement through the Channel District and then south towards our waterfront and then into the Central Business District. We also have the wide sidewalks, the pedestrian landscaping, and anyone walking along either side of Meridian now has a much more pleasant experience. It is much more conducive for the residents who live in that area. So for the purposes for the community redevelopment plan, not that any future improvements couldn't be made to Meridian, but for the purposes of the community redevelopment plan, we would consider that goal complete. The district core is generally, it's about 27 blocks that are bound by Twig Street to the north, Channelside Drive to the south, Meridian to the, Channelside Drive to the east, Meridian to the west, and then Cumberland down on the south. Again, these are the boundaries that were defined in the community redevelopment plan. I'm going to come back to progress made in this main district core, as it's referred to, as we go into the maps. I think it helps visually to show what that progress has been made to date, and then also be able to show the areas that still are in need of redevelopment or improvement or are available for such purposes. Next slide. These are all comments from the community redevelopment plan. These were some of the goals and accomplishments that were originally envisioned. Things like our streets, we'll show you in our map, and as Rob Rosner references every month, here's what we've completed, and I've got a chart for that. Here's what's in process and funded and that we're moving forward with. There was a concern about sidewalks and streetscaping, and every time we've done street improvements and upgrades, we do complete streets and we add streetscaping wherever we can, the public landscaping across those streets. So again, it will vary street by street based on the amount of room and the right-of-way. We do have some rather narrow streets in that area. The community redevelopment plan recognized a lack of parks. We have 3 parks completed to date, and as Rob mentioned, a 4th one potentially proposed that we're discussing with SPT to do down at the what we'll call the Garrison Park for now. The Lafayette Viaduct was a major concern at that time. That project has been complete. A lot of deteriorated buildings, aging structures. A lot of those structures were over 50 years old back in 2004. And again, we'll show you a visual of what areas and what buildings have been renovated or redone. A lot of concern in the CRP about the infrastructure, both in the streets and in the utilities below ground. And again, we'll talk about all the different streets that have been completed, what is committed to and in process. And as we go from each street, we also address updating the water lines, the storm and the wastewater as needed to accommodate all of these large developments. So we've been upgrading all of that as we go. And we've been undergrounding utilities and working with TECO in the areas that TECO also feels in their interest to also underground their utilities. Lack of signage and identifiers and public art. You'll see with a lot of the projects, both in the developments that have been built, Meridian, Channelside Drive, and as we look at the budgets, you'll see there is future funding also for more signage and identifiers. The potential contamination for the areas that were identified, again, in that city-owned property, there were brownfield remediation, and we've also had a state program for a brownfield bonus incentive for one of our developments, recognizing that they were in a brownfield area. At the time, the underutilized land and buildings resulting in a very low tax base was a concern, and as we have seen, we wouldn't be having this discussion if there was not a certain level of funding and revenue being generated through the TIF because of our improved tax base. So I wouldn't put that as complete. There's, again, always room for improvement, and we hope for continued growth, especially after we experienced the recession back in 08 and 09. So I'll call that improved. The CRP wanted to encourage investment by the private sector. There is a large focus in the community redevelopment plan about the role of the private sector in the development of channel districts. And as we shall see, there has been a lot of progress, there's been a lot of investment, and it continues and is ongoing, as you heard from some of our investors earlier this morning. The small lots, which are required to assemble for larger developments, that was also a challenge. We have seen that the private sector has been effective in making those land assemblage to be able to do some of these larger developments. And lastly, the plan calls out for affordable housing to residents of low and moderate income. And as mentioned, we have not done that to date. And as we go through future planning budgets a little bit later in this presentation, we have accommodated some funding for that if that is the direction that the CRA board and the Channel District CAC chooses to go. Next slide.
Michelle,
Yes, sir.
did you say the plan does call for low and moderate income?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Some of the outcomes that the Channel District Community Redevelopment Plan was hoping for, I won't read through all of them. Crime was a big issue back then, murders and battery and so forth. I believe that's been a very successful accomplishment that we've had. Again, some of the things we've talked about, open spaces and parks, pedestrian connections, underutilized tax base, having a mix of residential and commercial and office, having synergistic relationships, both with the Central Business District and Ybor, more green space, including the extension of the Riverwalk from downtown and through the Central Business District over to the Channel District, brownfield assistance, redevelopment support, the recognition of the location and the importance of this location to transportation through this area. At the end, I underlined two items, the affordable housing and the centralized chiller plant. Those would be the two items that no progress to date has been made on, so I did want to point those out. Next slide. Here are the graphics that will hopefully help put some of this into context. So this is the yellow line represents the boundary of the Channel District. As you can see, the yellow line does go down into and include part of the actual channel itself. The blackened areas in the center, we've blacked those out on purpose to start this graphic to show you here were all the developable areas that were not public property. So we've called out the port property. You can see that in sort of that light blue teal color with the hash marks. So all of that was the property at that time that the port had. You can see in the lower right corner, sort of in that elbow of the channel, the aquarium and the bit of the terminal. That land is owned by the city of Tampa, along with the parking lot that you can see just north of the aquarium. Those are city-owned lands. So here you can see everything is either private, city-owned, or port-owned. So we wanted to start to say this is where we were in 2004. Next slide. In white, you can see all of the redevelopment of all the new projects that have been developed since 2004 when the CRA was established. The green, bright green at the top, the middle, and sort of towards the bottom are the three new parks that have been built. And you can see now that the port has more of the land to the west of the aquarium and that city-owned land. Next slide. In the orange, what we've added are the projects that Mr. Stoltenberg and that Rob in their presentations have talked about. These are all the projects that are currently planned or in permitting to be built. You can see Sparkman's Wharf, and SPP right now is also that second large orange area to the left of where it says Sparkman's Wharf. SPP is looking at redeveloping that next and is working
Excuse
on the
me, Ms.
with
Bell,
that.
Ms. Bell, Ms. Bell, on
Yep.
point of order, could someone mute their phone? Someone mute their phone? Thank you. You continue, Ms. Bell.
Thank you, sir. So now you can see with this map, we have all the redevelopment, all the proposed development, and where we are at with visually the development and our status so far. Next map. In the yellow now, you can see these are the major properties that would be undeveloped parcels as of right now. So this is just, you know, this is our fourth and final map to give you the complete picture. So these yellow properties represent our most likely future redevelopment opportunities. The remaining black parcels still have businesses or buildings that are potentially viable, that may or may not experience, you know, be knocked down or redeveloped. So we wanted to give you this idea. Here are where we have potential for development. Here's what's currently being developed. And here is the accomplishment. Again, our private sector has really invested, as mentioned, in channel districts. They have gone gangbusters. This is an incredible amount of redevelopment within just a decade or so, and an incredible improvement for the channel district. We did have Mr. Langford, who was on the phone earlier. He mentioned his 26 acres that he has up at the top right hand. 6 of those acres, about approximately 6 of those, are in the channel district CRA, and you see those in that top right hand corner of the CRA boundary where it abuts the south side of the Selman, and then you see that cross street. So those are his acreages, that the channel and the basin does come up into his acreage, and you can see north 14th Street that divides his property from that sort of backwards P, and then the small R going to the right, and then all of the port property coming down from there. So with this visual, we just wanted everyone to be able to be on the same page to understand what has occurred and what potentially we can still do in the future, and also showing you the extent of the port property in relationship to all the other property. Next slide. Our channel district is 221 acres, but I did want to put that in context. So out of the 221 acres, 49 of those acres are in the public right-of-way. So those are our streets, that's Meridian, that's Channelside Drive, all those cross streets. As I pointed out in the boundary, part of that boundary does go down through the channel. So there are 48 acres of water that are included in that 21 acres. The port property is approximately 47 acres. I haven't been able to verify if it's 45 or 47, and I've heard both references, so we'll just use 47 for now, but just understand it's approximate. So that leaves approximately 77 acres, again, within that, what the Community Redevelopment Plan referred to as the core district of the Channel District CRA. Next slide. So then we go into what you've heard a lot about is the strategic action plan that is the implementation plan for the community redevelopment plan. And as Mr. Stoltenberg so aptly pointed out in reviewing our plan, the plan itself stated right out at the beginning, the purpose of that plan was to identify all the specific initiatives to guide the market development forces of the development of the channel district, to be able to proactively plan for the area's physical build out, again, recognizing all those challenges that we had, and also to make sure that the capital and aesthetic improvements would provide the new infrastructure, that superior public realm environment, very nice pedestrian linkages, the transportation, bicycles, and also quality of life for the residents that everyone knew eventually would be coming to the CRA. Next slide. The strategic action plan had 2 basic categories of recommended
Eddie, you want a pencil?
improvements.
8, 10,
Point of order,
Sir?
point of order.
5, 2.
Mute your phone. You can continue,
So
Ms.
the-
Bell.
Yes, the strategic action plan had two categories of recommended strategies. One was a listing, a rather detailed spreadsheet listing of all the different infrastructure projects and upgrades that they thought needed to be made to the channel district. And then also there was a whole section on the code and land use updates that they wanted to see an amendment to our codes. All of those code and land use recommendations had been adopted since the strategic action plan was approved back in 2006. Next slide. So here is that list of all the different street projects that were recommended by the strategic action plan. And you can see all the ones that have already been completed. In progress, these are the ones that Rob is always reporting to you that we're in design, we're working on these, here's where we are. You saw several of them just completed design and we'll be going out for bid on these for construction. TICO is listed as ongoing because we partner with TICO as we move through each part of the channel district and work on each street or segment. And then North 14th, at the time that we put this together last year for the channel district CAC, North 14th was a future project. It had not yet been discussed as a project to be funded yet, and we will reflect it as we get through here on planning purposes on future budgets. But as you can see, all of these infrastructure projects have either been completed or in progress, and these are, of course, are pending our partners also being ready. There is potential infrastructure that could be done on the port project, but until the port is ready to move forward with those segments of their master plan, we can't just go in and build that infrastructure without knowing what that final plan recommendation or the port being ready for us to come in and make those improvements. So of all the improvements that we can make, that slide represents our current status. Next slide. Several times over the past year, Rob has included this map. This shows you all those ones that are in progress, including the roundabout in front of the entrance to the port and the aquarium. And these are all the street segments that we just listed are all in progress. Next slide. Again, for people who are not visual and more text oriented, this is again Rob's slide from earlier that then lists all those projects, where we are with design, where we are with the actual construction, and you can see all those 0% in construction. Those are the construction bids we're going to be letting in the next 12 months to be able to commit to those projects. So all of these projects listed will be needed to be completed, and we do have to provide funding to complete all these projects. Next slide. So again, that's just a reminder of where we are and the current status of the development and the channel district. Next slide. So this is a graphic depiction of the projected annual TIF that was assumed back in the adoption of the strategic action plan. So this is the graphic version of the numbers that Mr. Stoltenberg had in his chart. And I just wanted to address this very quickly. At the time that this plan was written, it was written and adopted in 2006. At that time, we were in the, we found out now, we were at the top of our development bubble and our construction bubble within the state of Florida and the rest of the country. So at the time that we were estimating property taxes and that we were estimating costs of land, there was an assumption that land values and redevelopment values would continue to increase, and again, none of us were anticipating the recession. So had it not been for the recession, we probably would have a line somewhere between our actual line and the projected line. I just wanted to put in context where these numbers were coming from. So it's not that development itself did not proceed at a rate that was anticipated, but the recession reduced property taxes for a while, and then it took time to come back and grow those property taxes. Next slide. So when you looked at that very high rate of expectation for property taxes, it was based on the fact that we assumed that that growth in the value of the property taxes would increase much higher. So when you see that parkland acquisition of 30 million, that was created at a time when we were expecting property values to be much higher, much more quickly than actually happened. So to put into context, we have not spent 30 million because it did not cost us that much to acquire that land. When you look at the park improvements dollar, it was 7 million, and to date we've spent, as Mr. Stoltenberg pointed out, about 5.5 million, and if we do the Garrison Park, that would be another 3.5 million. So you can see our actual cost of making park improvements is in line with what was anticipated. It was just that the cost of actually obtaining land in order to make parks was much higher than anticipated. And when you look at it as a percentage of the budget, when you look at the 7 million, that was just about 2% of the estimated budget, and we've spent about 9% of our actual budget. Even if you included that 30 million in with the 7, that would have made about 12% of the total expected revenue budget. And again, we're at 9.7% of what we spent on parkland. So when you look at it as a percentage of the revenues we've taken in, I believe that we are on pace with what the strategic action plan was anticipating. Next slide. Actually, Sue Ling, for 1 second, can you switch to that extra slide that was the timeline slide? Thank you so much. This slide, there has been references to updating the strategic action plan. So I also wanted to update the CRA board during the past year what was done. So in April of 2019, the Channel District CAC started discussing the need to update their strategic action plan, and the issue was brought up to the CRA manager. Then in May of 2019, CRA staff were at their CAC meeting, provided an overview of the process, the scope, the costs, and the other CRAs, and then there was a brainstorming discussion among the CAC members to discuss their priorities and suggestions about what might need to be in the future and what was missing and what they felt the gaps were in the Channel District. And June 19th, in June in 2019, staff again, we had another discussion at the CAC meeting. They were given some of the information that you just received. Here's where we are with the strategic action plan. Here's what the community redevelopment plan. And then we had a brainstorming session to look at, again, what was their input and what were their ideas about what still needed to be done. The following month, again, at the July CAC meeting, staff was there again, and we established a timeline to hold public hearings to update the strategic action plan. Let me go back 1 second. At the June 19th meeting, the CAC did vote, and to Mr. Stoltenberg's credit, he was the one that made the motion that we should move forward with updating our strategic plan, and then we came up in July with a plan for doing that. In December of 2019, over at the port, staff did hold a public workshop for the Channel District community to receive their input on the update of the strategic action plan. And the next steps at that meeting, there was a scheduled parking study meeting for public input within the Channel District. That did occur at the end of January, and we had requested the public to give us their public input on the strategic action plan and the future of the CRA and their ideas by the end of January. And we got that far into it, and then COVID happened, and some of our staffing responsibilities changed. But this is how far we had gotten and the steps we had taken to update the strategic action plan in conjunction with the Channel District CAC. So, Celine, we can go back to the original PowerPoint. And next slide. That's perfect. So these were some of the comments that have come out of the CAC brainstorming session. Under future development, again, we hear a lot about the 47 acres for the port property. Again, we would have to do that in conjunction with the port and their plans for their property. There was talk in the port master plan that they adopted in 2015 to create a park that would be, basically create what were called the end caps of the corridor, where Curtis Hickson Park would be the park on the west. You would have a nice linkage going then to the east and have another park on the port property that would then end cap that transportation corridor. That extensive park system was not part of the original strategic action plan or the community redevelopment plan. That plan came up in 2015 as part of the port's master planning process. There was a parking garage that has been discussed over the years for the aquarium. Again, this would have to be a part of a larger strategy with the port itself when they're ready to move forward on their updated master plan. Again, talk about the Riverwalk continuation right there at Beneficial Drive, extending the Riverwalk all the way to Beneficial, go underneath Beneficial Drive, and then connect it into what we're calling Garrison Park and be connected all the way to the Sparkman's Wharf, the aquarium, and up to our linkages on Channelside Drive and Meridian. They are wanting more infill south of Kennedy, which would be a private sector endeavor as the market continues to grow. The parking study at that time was an issue. They have been moving forward with the parking study, and Rob Rosner's been working with our transportation folks and with the Channel District folks on the parking study and the changes that are being incorporated into the streets as we upgrade these, reflecting the needs in the parking study. In our park,
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes, sir. You recognize the fellow.
Thank you. Michelle, don't take me wrong. I appreciate all the detail. I'm just a little worried about time. So, Mr. Chairman, if you and Michelle could have a quick discussion about time as related to, you know, the board needs to discuss this as well as downtown, and then we have to get ready for our 1:30. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
Mr.
I have,
how long do you think
yeah, if you can indulge me for 5 more minutes, it will then be all up to you guys.
Thank you.
So what they wanted with their parks was concern about funding some additional maintenance at Madison Street Park. They felt that Washington Street Park, one of the first parks that was built, is now ready for some upgrades, requesting funding for some programming at the parks, and especially the 12th Street Park, continuing to fund branding and gateway, concern about the United Artists Building being underutilized. Again, they passed a motion a couple months ago to look at hiring a full-time marketing person that rents an office within the Channel District, and then look at schools, which again would be a non-CRA. So this gets us to the main part of your discussion. Next slide. So Suling, don't move it yet, but after I just update you what this is on the budgets that I gave you and will be on the next slide, it shows you that if you continue revenue, and again, reacting to the motion that was made, if you continue revenue through FY21, the year coming up, you will be able to complete all the committed projects, all those street projects, and then some additional potential projects and the Garrison Street Park at an estimated cost of $3.5 million. Should you continue the CRA through FY22, you can do all of those committed projects, the potential projects, Garrison Park, and the Riverwalk extension. If the revenue continues past FY23, then you will do again all of that, and then have an additional estimated $9 million that you can do for an affordable housing, workforce housing, or any other additionally identified projects by the CAC and the CRA board. After FY23, based on all our current planning, we've run out of projects. That is not to say there isn't more that can be done, but based on all of our current plans, we will have run out of projects by the time we fund everything through FY23. So keeping the Channel District CRA active beyond FY23 would require you to update the community redevelopment plan and the strategic action plan. On my last slide here with the budget, I'm just showing this to you again graphically. This budget is shown for planning and discussion purposes only. So you can see at the top under committed, under the expenses, those are all of the projects that Rob and the CAC have approved to build. I've got two numbers there that say allowance. They're highlighted. Those we don't have specific projects for, but were included for the parking, any parking improvements, and the undergrounding as we work with TICO, or as a development happens, sometimes the developer comes to us and they need our assistance in working with TICO, and so we have an allowance there. The potential below that section are all the additional projects that we could. I highlighted some of them, and you can see in the notes. So when I say that if you fund all the way through FY21, you can do everything in that top half and everything in the bottom half, not counting those the boardwalk or the Riverwalk extension or the affordable housing. FY22 gets you that Riverwalk extension. FY23 will get you that extra $9 million. And we just put them in a year of order. If you wanted to put off Garrison Park and the extension of the Riverwalk, you could certainly take that money and put it towards affordable housing or other projects first, and then do the Riverwalk and Garrison Park right after that. But as you can see, all of them can be in a funding planning year and accomplished through FY23 from a funding perspective. Again, some of the construction would obviously go on beyond these years, but this is when the commitment for funding would be made. And so that's the end of our presentation. So we just wanted to have all this information out to the public, to all of you, to be able to answer your questions and give you a baseline for any future discussion. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Mr. Chair, this is Carlson.
Carlson.
Thank you. I have several questions. I also have some comments and a couple motions. If you're okay, I'll ask the questions and then come back to the comments and motion later, or do you want me to do it all at once?
I'll give you point of privilege. Just go ahead, sir.
So I'll ask the questions and then we can come back if you want. But Mr. Massey, is he still on?
Yes, I'm still on.
Okay.
Councilman.
Yeah, well, and by the way, I should say this at the beginning, the staff has been, I appreciate the staff working on this. They've been yelled at, argued with, called names. I've been called names, probably some of you have been called names. And, you know, discussions like this are about leadership. We have to have important discussions. We have to discuss and debate. Whatever we end up with, hopefully the city will be better by the end of this discussion. But I want to thank the staff for going through this whole thorough process. But one of the arguments that's been made is that the city is reneging on the city is going back on a contract, not following through on a contract. And so I wanted to ask Morris, I asked you to go through and look at all the documents, all the prior minutes. Is there any situation where the city has ever in writing made a written commitment to any developer or to the Channel District that this CRA will be open until 2034?
The only place that I could find that there was any statement about the duration of the Channel District CRA is in the adopted community redevelopment plan, which by law, there has to be an outside date established in any community redevelopment plan for completion of all redevelopment activity. And in that adopted community redevelopment plan, the date is 2034. But as far as private contracts or private commitments or any other legal documentation, I cannot find any.
And so that by putting it in there or listing that date anywhere else, is that a promise that the city or the CRA has made? Is that a promise that we should keep or are legally obligated to keep?
You as the city council has the authority under law to amend the community redevelopment plan. So you have that, in my opinion, that legal ability, as long as you are not somehow creating an issue with any legal commitments that you've otherwise made. And plans get amended and changed. There are other jurisdictions that have terminated their CRAs early. So we're not the first jurisdiction to consider this. So in my opinion, you can just because it's in the plan does not mean that you are then contractually obligated to go through that to the end of time.
And in your analysis, are you aware of any verbal commitments or promises that were made that this would stay in place until 2034?
Well, obviously, I was an assistant city attorney
Yeah,
when the CRA was created, and I was in private practice for a long period of time, and have just come back to the city. So I'm not aware of all the verbal communication that has gone on over that period of time, but I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, and the intention of the legislation is that if there's no slum and blight, if there aren't issues to be resolved, that it's allowed by law for these to be sunset or capped, right?
Correct. I mean, the legislation allows, and this makes sense, that things change over time, and therefore the local governing body should have the authority to modify the community redevelopment plan as originally adopted, because these plans are adopted usually with a 30-year horizon, which was what the Channel District Community Redevelopment Plan was adopted for.
And then maybe, I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but for you or Ms. Van Loan, in your professional opinion, would the Channel District qualify to sign up for a CRA today?
I mean, what you would do is a slum and blight analysis today in order to establish it as a new community redevelopment area. I mean, as several of the public has pointed out, there are areas within the Channel District CRA that have not been redeveloped, but I don't know what the outcome of the slum and blight study would be today, given the level of development that's occurred within that area, which is
and potential for redevelopment is different than slum and blight, right? Just because something like part of it on the end of the channel is a working ship repair business, and with several hundred high-paying jobs. So it's not like it's sitting there derelict. It's actually adding to the economy right now. Correct.
Correct. And I would not consider that necessarily vacant, but vacant and deteriorating buildings, deteriorating infrastructure, problems with the infrastructure or park facilities, lack of affordable housing. Those are the types of issues that you would typically look at when you were trying to establish whether there are slum and blight conditions that need to be remedied through the community redevelopment process that's authorized under Chapter 163.
Yeah, and just a point, Ms. Van Loan just presented this slide on how most of the projects that are in the plan could be completed by 2021. Additional ones, it could be added by 2022 and some by 2023. One of the criticisms we've had, Ms. Van Loan, is that the public needs to have a chance to participate, and I believe in that too. But isn't it true that there are regularly scheduled CAC meetings, and that notes are taken, and the public regularly has a chance? How often are those meetings held? And do you take notes, and do you listen to the public in those meetings?
Unless there are holidays or other activities that get in the way, generally the CACs meet every month. Minutes are taken. Many of the meetings are recorded. Yes, the CACs have the opportunity to discuss issues along the route. And as I mentioned, the Channel District CAC last year did initiate and start the process to update their strategic action plan.
So we talk about the fact that the action plan was created in 2006, so it's old. But if members of the public in the CAC meetings asked that a project be added, could they have done that? Is that a part of the process that they could have done, or would they have to? Are they required to have a new plan to add projects?
The only time we would, if we can't justify a project request within either 163 or the community redevelopment plan, then any CAC would be told, that we can't build that project or we can't do that. A good example would be the discussion we had last fall regarding could the CRAs fund some sort of workforce development. So while there might be worthwhile projects and programs out there, if we cannot tie them back legally to their community redevelopment plan or the Chapter 163, we're not legally able to move forward with them. Anything that we can, so we just reviewed what the community redevelopment plan called for, the streets, the infrastructure, supporting private development agreements, park space. So within the purview of all of those goals and all of the desires and issues and challenges that were identified within the community redevelopment plan, any project that falls within that is proposed as long as there's funding there, yes, could be moved forward with.
So if somebody had asked for an additional park, then you could have added it to the plan, right? Something that would have been allowed, you could have added it, okay. And then before we started this process a few months ago, were you aware of any requests of the CAC or the community that were not already added into the plan or not already considered to be added in the plan?
I've got Rob Rosner with me here. I've only been, I'll let Rob address that.
Hi, Councilman. This is Rob Rosner. At each one of our CAC meetings, we record them. They're usually the first Wednesday of the month unless it lands on a holiday week, and then we push it to the following. We have listened to them. The 9 projects that I've been talking to you about were projects that were identified since I took the job in 2015. So the very first, right off the bat, was, hey, there's been projects waiting to happen. Can we get going on those?
So the bottom line is we have been listening to public, we have been adding.
Absolutely.
And to your knowledge, have we turned down any projects that were requested that could have qualified?
Well, just like every other chance is that, we can only fund the projects that, we're going to push the projects that can be funded. And so in 2017, I said, hey, there's been a number of requests. Can we do all 9 of these projects at once? And contracts admin and the administration at the time said that's a good idea. We can get more bang out of our buck and get one contractor to get moving on all these instead of having 9 small separate projects.
So two other quick questions. As I understand it, the county and the city already have an interlocal agreement that defines how the county will pay for projects in the downtown district, because that CRA district was modified. If we sunset the Channel District CRA, is it possible that we can sign an interlocal agreement with the county? So one of the arguments is, well, you're stupid because you're going to lose half the money. But couldn't we, just like we did in downtown, go to the county and say, can you please take part or all of your money and through an interlocal agreement apply it to whatever city council decides to spend this on, and then it would be a joint agreement maybe between the city. It would no longer be part of the CRA, but it would be a joint agreement between the city and the county.
Well, the way that the interlocal works for the downtown CRA is that the county no longer pays in to the tax increment fund generally, but they have agreed for approved redevelopment projects to pay up to 50% through the TIF toward the cost of that project. And that as long as the city, through its TIF and the CRA, funds the other 50%. That's really kind of the deal that was worked out.
So setting that one aside for a second, are there other instances where the city and county have an interlocal agreement where they jointly fund projects?
Yes, the city and county can negotiate. It's up to the county whether they're willing to negotiate. We can't force it, but yes, we have several interlocal agreements with the county over a myriad of subjects, and a lot of it deals with who's funding what, and they're joint projects that both the city and the county are interested in.
So if we decided today that we wanted a sunset, then as the money would go to the general fund eventually on the city council side, and then city council could ask the county officially to partner on certain projects or for some kind of fund, correct?
We could ask.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
And so there's no guarantee that it's not going to be spent. We're not losing the money. We just haven't asked yet, right? My last question, if we sunset the Channel District CRA, and I don't think this has been mentioned yet, Ms. Van Loan, if we sunset the Channel District CRA in 2022, how much would be left in their reserve fund?
Hang on, I'm pulling up the budget. So if you sunset your revenue after 2022 and you do all those projects, again, on this planning budget, the proposed planning budget, at the end of 2022, hang on, I've got to go to my other budget that only had so at the end of 2022, your balance, your balance would be 17 million, but you would if you stop taking that revenue in at FY22. So let me start over. If FY22 is the last year you collect revenue, you would end the year with approximately $17 million, which could then fund those additional remaining projects. You wouldn't take in money in FY23, but there would be enough funding to fund the remaining of those projects.
So let's say we ended in 2023, at the end of, and let's say that we ended at the end of 2023. So we finished all those projects. How much would be left in the reserve fund then?
You would have, it includes, and I just want to point out that the budget does include that these estimated budgets, that we did have a commitment of $150,000 to the streetcar every year. So there is a lump sum payment if you terminate early to make up for the gap in the remaining years. So that would also fund the remaining through FY 2033 for your commitments to the streetcar. So after you made all those commitments, including funding the streetcar as committed, you would have a balance of approximately $431,000.
Okay, and so that money then would go into some kind of trust fund and could be used into the future, right, for other kinds of projects?
We would hold it in escrow until all of the construction projects were complete. And then once all of the construction was complete, any remaining funds would go back to the port, the city, and the county based on our contribution ratios.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the end of my questions. I have statements and a couple of motions. Do you want me to hold or you want me to go now?
We're going on time, so go ahead and do it now.
May I speak? This is Charlie Miranda. Can I speak on that?
Yes, Mr. Miranda, you're
I haven't
recognized.
spoken. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just listening for a long period of time, very intensely on what's going on. And just as an observant, not only as an elected official, but as I see it, the questions were asked remaining of this, pertaining to this. The CRA started in 2004. And then the question was asked, what if the money's left over? Well, what projects have been done that have not been finished? Well, I understand the question, but if you apply that to any CRA that's been operating now for 2004 to 2020, 16 years, if they haven't made any progress, then we have a problem that we created. But if they make progress, certainly that's the majority of the projects, because that's more than 50% of the lifetime of 30 years, would have been at least started or finishing or something along the line where you see some progress. So I believe that all the CRAs have done that. I think the youngest one that's been in affordability as far as from the time it started was the West Tampa CRA. And I believe I'm correct, that started 3 or 4 years ago when the citizens wanted it and we gave it to them and the county agreed. So all these things are questions that I ask myself as a participant just listening and saying, what if? So what if we go on and say this? You think the other side, whoever they are, say still, I heard some today individuals that came in and testified that there was X amount of land, whether it's correct or not correct, whether it's an acre or 500 acres or 30 acres or 20 acres, and you take out all the river walk, you take down all the sidewalks, all the public spaces, how many acres are left? I don't know, 40 or 50 or 20 or 30. But that's still, in my opinion, an avenue that if we start doing this, the other side, whoever they may be, may file a complaint legally against us. And I don't want to go through a long process when that CRA has done what it's supposed to have done to this time. I'm saying you have to be very careful the way the questions were posed, because they were posed in a way where it specifically spoke about one CRA. However, if you apply that principle to the remaining CRAs that are active, you would see that the progress is equal to or greater than the same one that we're talking about. So how would someone with competent position, a judge, rule on that? I don't really know. So when that CRA, and I understand where the problem is coming, that we want to do something and we want to help affordable housing, or whatever name you want to apply to it. And that's a different subject matter for me, because I have a lump in my throat every time I hear about that, because there's something to it that I don't understand. And I'll explain it later on when it's not relevant to this conversation. But as I'm listening to all the conversation regarding the statement that we have today, regarding the testimony that we have today, whether it's competent or not, I really don't know. However, it's on the record. And then that record has to be protected in one form or another, as faithful or not faithful. So I would have to say that if it's not faithful, then you have nothing to worry about. But if it's faithful and there was a strategic plan that they asked for, and for a year or so they haven't received, then where are we going to go and how are we going to explain that when the CDC, that people in the CRA that are doing this themselves, I have never been to a CDC meeting. I don't go to them because just the presence of an elected official tells me that I don't want to be part of that. I sit on a board, and for me to go listen to that CDC, in my opinion, just for me, Charlie, I don't care about the others. Me, I don't go to them because I know what's going to happen later on in life. You're going to get called, you're going to get asked a question, and you might have some embarrassment. Not that it's going to happen, but just the matter that it could happen, I stay away from it. I can get criticized all I want, and that doesn't bother me. As long as I stay arm's length away, when I got to make a final decision as a member of the CRA, there is a distinct difference between the two. So I sit back and I listen and I listen and I listen and I listen and I start putting pluses and minuses. And what equals to? It equals to a good idea. However, the ramifications could be much greater. Because if you can do it to one CRA, you can certainly do it to another. And when you look at what Michelle Van Loan said, you have a commitment of 10 additional years or more to the streetcar at $1.5 million, because you offered $150,000 for 10 years or a lot more. You're looking at $1.5 million. So what's left is $456,000. I think that was the number she said. And I have no notes in front of me. I'm just going by memory. So now that portion goes to part to the city, part to the county, and part to the Port Authority. Not much, but part of it. So what's left of that 456, unless I misinterpreted and it's 456 less to the city and the others have already been given their share? I don't know. But I think it's 456 in total, minus the three parts in equal or unequal terms. So what is really left? One house, two houses you can build? There's got to be a better way to fund these homes. There's got to be a better way to do it. And when we get off this subject matter and we go back to the council, I'm going to tell you how I like to do it. And maybe I'm wrong, but I have an idea that's been festering in my mind for a long period of time. And a lot of people are not going to like it, but I like it. And it accrues all the money that we're giving away under the cover of darkness. Not that we're doing anything wrong. It's the amount of money that we have to pay for other events that are not creating any revenue, and it's hitting the city in the pocketbook when those monies can be diverted into a house. The most important thing in any city, and believe me, I come from public housing, not the slums, but public housing. And that's what I'm most proud of, that a lot of people that I know came from there and are doing very, very well. But you have to have a plan how to get out. And I understand the conversation it is. And I understand what's going on, or I believe I do anyway. But to go on and create a situation now between three governments, it ain't just the city of Tampa, it's a county, it's a Port Authority, and it's other individuals that have made testimony on the record today, as I heard it for the last hour and a half or 2 hours on this one subject matter that we've been talking about. So I've been sitting still, listening to everything. And in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I have no professional jurisdiction to say that I'm right, but I can guarantee you that if we go on this plane, you might be at the end of the rainbow without a rainbow, because I think we're heading into the wrong territory. But that's just me speaking. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir. Mr. Carlson,
and Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, this is Vera.
You recognize.
If I may, before motions are made, I was just wondering because I would like to express my thoughts on this. I don't know if other council members do. I just have the opportunity for folks to speak. Maybe the motions can come up and then we speak however you would like. I don't want to interrupt Councilman Carlson's motions, et cetera, but I would like to talk on the overall narrative and issue.
Well, as a point of order, I'll tell you what, as a point of order, we can go down the line and each councilman can speak on this subject before Mr. Carlson would like to make a motion or retain a motion at this time. So you have the floor.
Which one of it?
So,
Mr. Riel, you
Mr. Chair. Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Excuse me. You know, a lot of interesting ideas. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered on this. We've heard some of them today. Some of them have been floated, et cetera. I salute Councilman Carlson, like I said before, for his leadership on this issue of bringing this forward and his great interest in this area, in these areas, I should say. I think that's really worthy of praise, thinking outside of the box, et cetera. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, a lot of issues that need to be analyzed in detail by the CRA board, by the city, by the appropriate governing entities before we proceed, in my opinion. When I take a look at the process proposed, for example, of shutting down the CRA with a process with our CRA hats, putting on our council hats, putting that money in the general fund, designating it to certain areas, having buy-in from the Castro administration, we haven't talked about that, and then now potentially buy-in from the county for the funds that we'll lose from that CRA. I see a lot of potential there, but also see a lot of potential for a lot of bad things. I see a lot of potential Hail Mary passes that may have to be made in order for this all to come true. That raises a lot of questions. It doesn't bring down the intent, but I think it raises a lot of procedural questions that we really have to dig into as a council. We have to make sure that, or as a CRA board, we have to make sure that the potentially inevitable detriment on this does not outweigh the potential benefit. There is certain detriment, but there's also potential benefits. We have to have a balanced approach on this. You know, with regards to the potential benefits, I think that is open and obvious. We're talking about issues in areas, and Councilman Carlson brings up areas wisely and correctly that have been ignored for too long. East Tampa, in comparison to its needs, clearly ignored. Sulphur Springs, very rarely even talked about. And then the USF area, obviously an area that's very, very dear to my heart as the councilman there, and a lot of work that we've been doing on this issue. But we also have to talk about the potential consequences of what we could do, the potential detriment. Councilman Carlson brought up the point, Ms. Van Loan also brought up the point of Hillsborough County and the funds that they pay into the CRA. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's about $3 million a year for channel side. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That's money that potentially we would be giving back to the county. And for what? Over the next 10 years, that could be potentially 30, 35, whatever it is, $1 million. We would give up rights. We have to acknowledge that. I know Councilman Carlson just brought up some ideas here with regards to the county and buy-in. Again, a lot of uncertainty there with regards to making this go our way. Something that I haven't heard about that I'd like to hear from folks, what are the consequences of this with Tallahassee? We know that there's a war of local government and CRAs in Tallahassee. What will they do? I just think it's a question that's worth posing. What assurances do we have for the administration that these funds will be spent where we prospectively want it if we get there? Is there a formal buy-in? I mean, that's something to me that is needed just to have a conception for this idea. We would need to be in lockstep with the administration, and I presently don't see that. We would need to be in lockstep with the county to have this go right. What does this mean with litigation exposure? You know, how valid are potential estoppel or whatever you want to call it claims against the CRA, against us, if we were to proceed with that? How will this affect the process if we choose to go down that area? You know, something that's also worth bringing up is if we want to help these areas, let's also have a larger discussion. We talked about a Tampa Innovation District for the North Tampa USF area. You know, we've also talked about things like, and I know some council members have opined on this negatively, some potentially positively, but it's something worth talking about, a home rule TIF or a CRA for Sulphur Springs or USF. It's just an idea to put out there, that if instead of doing something with many Hail Mary passes, we take a look at other potential options that we have, again, just to bring up ideas. Something's been brought up with regards to the Strategic Action Plan and Community Redevelopment Plan, you know, taking a look at having that amended. I just think that we need to do a lot of work to gather a lot of information to make an informed decision on this. I think that being asked to go and taking a clear step on this very, very large idea with a great, wonderful, compassionate intent, I don't think is wise at this time. I think we need a lot more information from the county. We need more information from the administration. We need more information with regards to what other options do we have for these areas, such as, for example, again, a home rule TIF or a CRA for Sulphur Springs, the USF North Tampa area. just exploring those options, I think, is what we have to do at this time. Very important issues are raised that I think that we should salute, but I think we have to go forward with care and asking the right questions, because there are an awful lot of pitfalls where we could take steps, alienate a lot of the process, increase a lot of exposure, and if all these Hail Marys or, bottom of the ninth, whatever you want to call it, issues don't go our way, then we may very well end up failing. So again, just questions that I want answered, questions that I think that we should be asking as a CRA board. An innovative idea, a lot of great intent there, but I think questions that we have to be asking as a CRA board. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Rand, you're recognized.
No, this is Maniscalco.
Okay, you're recognized, sir.
Real quick, and I appreciate the comments by Councilmember Vieira. He said a lot of what I wanted to say. My concern is when, if we are to sunset a CRA, we essentially relinquish control to factors that, we jeopardize too much money, meaning the county, meaning it goes into the general fund. You don't know what the administration is going to do. Once something goes into the general fund, the money can be moved around anywhere. So there's no real guarantee. That's those are just my basic, simple concerns. I like the idea of taking, money and investing in an affordable housing. I remember back to the campaign last year, and affordable housing was always one of the top 3 things, whether a mayoral candidate or city council candidate brought up, because we know the importance. But I support and agree with the idea that we need to make these investments, but we need to look at the right way to do it and not be careless, because again, as Councilman Vieira said, we don't know the pitfalls. We don't know what will happen, legally in the future, because we have nothing written. There's no guarantee that the county would then, what they'll do with that money, what the administration will do with that money. So that's where I stand. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. I'm going to go down the line. Mr. Citro, would you like to chime in, sir?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Is Ms. Van Loon still with us?
Yes, sir.
When is the last time that the channel side did a strategic action plan and a CRA plan?
The original community redevelopment plan, I believe, is dated 04, and the strategic action plan is dated 06.
How long would it take for both of those plans to be accomplished and brought back before this board?
Probably by the spring.
Probably by the spring. Mr. Chair and board members, I would not feel confident in taking any actions until I saw a new strategic action plan and a new CRA plan. I feel that especially with the hope of new retail, restaurant, and hotels coming in to the Channel Side and downtown area, we still need, as our chair put it, essential workforce housing that might be helped out by any monies that are collected by the CRA or the CDC. And I still feel there's some need left within that area. So I would not feel comfortable taking any type of actions today until I see a new strategic action plan and a new CRA plan. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dingfelder, would you like to chime in, sir?
I'm good for now. I'm good for now. I'll wait until I hear any motions, and then I might speak to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me say this. As a person who has sat on a CAC, at times there are fights with the administration. At times it seems that the managers are in conflict with the CAC sometimes, and this is from experience, especially with East Tampa. And you have to look at sometimes we ask for things and there's always no, or we're waiting on legal. It takes months and months and months, and sometimes legal is very busy. A lot of different things go into the CAC not following the strategic action plan at times that I see. So to me, I think we have to have some guidelines to make sure that these CACs, when they put that plan out, that there's the guidelines and the CAC are being heard. Like you heard from Mr. Stoltenberg earlier. it seems like sometimes, you know, with different administrations, it's been their way and not really the CAC's way of how to move their communities. And I think that's kind of happened with East Tampa. As you look at why you say it hasn't really moved, because they really haven't been heard to where it needs to go. So I think we have to look at, when we talk about sunsetting, I think we still got a little bit to do in Channel Side, especially when we talk about giving money back. And right now we need housing. And I'm glad Ms. Carlson is talking about housing. And I think you need to look at some of the things that you look in the plan that have to be first, that you have to look at doing first. And I think housing in all of these strategic action plans need to be first. Talking about essential work, talking about making sure you've got decent housing for everyone. And Mr. Sister talked about when you're talking about having restaurants that bring some work for people to be able to live in a good place and play, it brings some equity and equality. So for me, I'm not really sure about sunsetting because, again, like Miranda said, we could be going down a slope that we may not need to go down at this time. So I'm going to wait to hear what the motion is, and I'll yield back to Mr. Carlson if he wants to complete.
Thank you, sir. To a couple of the points on the legal issue, you all remember, and Morris can tell us, the CAC is not a separate entity. It's an advisory group for us, and we want to listen to the community, but Morris can interrupt me and say otherwise, but I don't think the CAC itself has any legal standing. There may be developers who claim that somebody at some point made a verbal promise to them, but what I've heard from the legal department is that the city clearly states that contracts are only contracts if they're in writing and approved by the city council and the mayor. In terms of studying this, we've had this on the table for several months, and the staff have gone through hours and hours and hours of studying it and several meetings with the community talking about it. And I feel like we have the information to be able to make a decision, and I think it's pretty clear what to do. Some statements real fast. I think we need to declare victory for these two CRAs. As I understand it, they were created under Mayor Aurora's administration, and we should declare victory that slum and blight have been resolved. You know, these areas looked a lot different, as the picture showed. They looked a lot different before, but we should declare victory that they worked. We shouldn't criticize them, and as some have said, we're not punishing them because they worked. We're celebrating the fact that they worked, but also there's no legal or legislative promise to keep these CRAs until any year in the future, 2033 or whatever. The legislation allows us to set end dates, but it doesn't require us to end at certain times. In regard to the point about the county, we're not losing the money because we can go to the county and ask them. There are other partnerships with the county. We have interlocal agreements, and it may not be 100%, but we're not losing that money. We just have to ask them. And I've had some conversations that indicate that we could get all or most of that money if we had the right kinds of discussions. But we have to move the discussions forward, or we'll never know the answer from the county. I don't have the ability or right to negotiate with the county at all as an individual city council member. More importantly, I think this is a civil rights issue. If we had promoted this, and I did not, by the way, if we had promoted it, we could have had 1,000 people on the phone this morning, just like we had hundreds come before us before. There have been thousands of people who marched in the streets, and they're looking for equity, equality, civil rights. And as several folks have mentioned, parts of the city have not been paid attention to over the years. We know that there was a lot of attention and money spent on downtown and not in other areas. We have a situation here. You've seen the list where there's in Channel District, the utilities have been undergrounded, the roads have been redone, there are new parks that have been purchased and built, there are advanced lighting that's been put in, there's advanced seating, there's all kinds of amenities. In South Tampa, in my district, there are parks where the gates and the benches and other things are falling apart, or places where there need to be sidewalks. There's infrastructure needs all over the city. But in East Tampa, we have a community center that has rats in it. And so we have to figure out how to solve these problems. This is a big problem that we have to resolve here going forward. And the community is asking us and demanding that we make decisions based on this. And just because we didn't have 100 or 200 people or 1,000 people on the phone today, doesn't mean that the community is not going to demand this after we finish this meeting. If you think about it, some others were using analogies. It's kind of like one area of the city has a VIP pass to funding. This money should be in the general fund anyway, and everybody should have access to it. So what happens in other neighborhoods is that if a neighborhood in South Tampa wants something, they have to come ask the city council and the administration for the money. What happens in Channel District is if they want something, they can just put it on the list and fund it. And so what's happening is that this VIP pass is allowing one part of the city to get extra treatment, extra things that other parts of the city, when other parts of the city don't have basic needs covered. It's really not fair to subsidize a CRA that has already solved the slum and blight problem. And in case anybody's not clear on this, if you took the ad valorem taxes that are collected in that district, all of them should be going into the general fund, paying for basic services. They're not paying their fair share of basic services, police and fire, and all the other services. So who's paying that difference? South Tampa, New Tampa, the other areas that don't have CRAs. In fact, the areas that do have CRAs are partly paying it. And it's not fair to the rest of the city to subsidize an area so that they can buy things that are nice to have when we need basic needs, basic necessities covered in other areas. There are areas of Tampa that are dark that have no lights, and we're spending money on extra things that we don't necessarily need. There are parts of South Tampa that would love the city to pay for undergrounding, and because we share tax money with the rest of the city, we can't just go with our VIP pass and ask anybody to pay it, but this CRA can. And it's nothing wrong with it. I'm not criticizing the people who are there or their interest in protecting their neighborhood. It's just that it's not fair to the rest of the city. Please also don't forget that the city has at least a $22 million shortfall right now at a time when constituents want us to fix failing infrastructure and bring amenities to their neighborhoods. People are sitting at home and they're suddenly noticing all the things that are wrong with their streets. They're noticing that there are parks that are not fixed. There are sidewalks that are falling apart. There are all kinds of infrastructure problems. We're getting calls and emails every day, and we don't have the money to cover even the basic services, but yet we're allowing this VIP pass to funding for one part of the city that doesn't have the problem of Summit Blight that they originally had that we were trying to fix, and it's now fixed. I think we need to focus on basic needs throughout the city, not just what's nice to have in one area. If we delay this to do a strategic plan, what are we going to end up with? With the same place that we are right now, the same inequities, the same question about, do we fund things that are nice to have or things that are necessary in the rest of the city? And it's not pitting one part of the city against the other. This money should be going into the general fund. We need to be putting in the general fund, and that district needs to be paying its fair share so that we can figure out how to fund things going forward. There are projects that we could fund.
Mr. Carlson, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up your discussion, and we need to move on because we have a 1 o'clock council meeting, and we got some other items on the agenda. I'm sorry.
There was a mention about port property. There's maritime property that the port owns that we would not influence anyway. There's active port property that we would not normally affect. If we move this money, it doesn't mean that Channel District is not going to get money. If the money's in the general fund, Channel District still could get access to it. Channel District can come before us and the administration just like anybody else, but instead of having a VIP pass to the funding, they have to ask, and those projects have to be in front of it. If that group, Mr. Sollenberger, or that group wants to come before city council regularly, I'm willing to make a motion to have them come before us 4 times a year so that they can pitch the projects they want, and we can try to negotiate with the administration to put them in the project. The bottom line point is that it's not fair that the rest of the city is subsidizing this, and we need to focus on things that are essential throughout the city, not just the things that are nice to have in one part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you,
May I speak, Mr. Chairman, just 1 second, Charlie Miranda?
Of course, you're recognized, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you well know, if you check the record, I, on the record, said that I would never support another CRA. And I've said that, not today, I've said that a year and a half ago, maybe even longer. And because when you see these things, we create a situation that is calming, flourishing, and then you compare it to somebody else that is not. No matter, in West Tampa, I got the same problems that the previous speaker, the same problems that any part of the city has. I got failing streets. I got rats. In fact, I had rats in my house. So you can go check best exterminators. I paid them 3 times to come and terminate my house take out the rats. And so I'm not saying that, and my house is pretty clean. That doesn't matter, because across the street when they had development, there were a lot of trees that were shaken and moved and so forth, and the rats had to go live somewhere else. So I guess they liked my address, and they came over for a visit. So I had to take them out. Not one time, not 2 times, but I called them 3 times and paid them 3 times. I also put around the house, you can go check, all these boxes where they come eat the poison, they drink water, and they die. So I've done all that, and I understand that, and hope if you go back to the Dick Greco administration, we tried to get every park in unison to spend, and we borrowed money for them. We went out, if I remember, and I'm gonna call Dick Greco after this conversation and find out exactly how many were done. But it was done. I try to leave no stone unturned. Can I carry all of them? No. But I'll tell you what, when we come to the council meeting, you will see the motions that I'm going to make. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, thank you. Ms. Van Loan,
Yes, sir.
as I look at the schedule here, we've got probably about 20 minutes before we have to go to another proceeding. So the required approvals, are these something that we can hold off for our next meeting, or do we need to get these done right away?
We would greatly appreciate if 5 through 8 could be acted upon. Thank you, sir.
And relative to item 5, there is a substitute agreement that I submitted by memorandum to you all and the CRA secretary. This is Morris Massey. I would appreciate if you move number 5, that you move the substitute agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to
Mr.
move
Chair.
items 5. I'd like to move items 5 through 8 with the substitute amendment, and then we can get back to Carlson.
Second with Maniscalco.
Have a motion for Mr. Dingfellow, a second by Mr. Maniscalco. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please. Madam Chair, Madam Clerk.
Viera,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda, Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Good.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson, you recognize.
Yeah, since we're running out of time on this and we've got to get ready for the city council meeting, I'm happy to go through and have longer discussions about it. But here's what I would suggest. What do you all think about if we move finishing discussion on Channel District and the whole discussion on downtown to the next CRA meeting? So I would make a motion that we move the remainder of the discussion on Channel District and the downtown discussion to the next CRA meeting.
Have a motion.
Viera will second that. Viera will second that, and if I may, Mr. Chair, if I may, I think it's worthy because I think that concerns were made that people can go back on and follow up on. So I think that's a very important
Question on the
motion.
motion.
Go ahead, Ms. Dingfellow, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carlson and Mr. Viera, I would appreciate splitting that into 2 separate motions, just because I think we've had plenty of discussion on the channel side. I think we've heard from a majority of council members on how they feel about the status quo versus changing something. I think we've heard from the community. I think this has been hanging out there for a month or 2, and I think we should put it to rest. So, as far as downtown, obviously, we haven't heard anything. So I'd be wholly in favor of continuing downtown till the next available meeting. But to the maker of the motion and to the second, I'd appreciate splitting that for that purpose.
Maker of motion, are you willing to change?
So you want to, if I understand you right, you want to finish Channel District today and then discuss downtown next time. I would rather keep the motion the way it is, but let's see how we get the vote if we don't.
You're accepting that amendment to the motion?
No, I'd rather keep the motion as it is. I think there's a longer discussion that we have to do on Channel District. There were some concerns raised by my colleagues about getting access to more information, hearing more from the public. That would give us another month to talk to staff and get additional information. And then we can, if folks have questions that they feel haven't been answered, then we can get those questions answered in the next month and we can make an informed decision. Otherwise, we can make a vote now, but then but then I think people will feel uncomfortable with the answer.
Okay, I think under Robert's rules, and Mr. Massey can correct me, I'll make a substitute motion, which is to just continue the downtown, item to the next available meeting, but that this item is laid on the table. Channel side, laid on the table.
And this is, Vieira, if I may, Mr.
You're
Chair.
recognized. You're recognized.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. My problem is not one of substance and whatnot. I mean, I think we all have our minds made up one way or another. My issue is there's going to be a motion. There's going to be a lot more discussion. I don't know if we have time. That's my challenge.
Mr. Massey?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Massey?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vieira makes a good point. We're running close to time. I don't know the leeway I have to just pull the gavel and ask for these items to be continued until the next CRA meeting. So I'm just asking for a legal opinion right now.
You have, I think Mr. Dingfelder's made a substitute motion. I guess I would see if there's a second for that. And if there's not, then Mr. Carlson's motion to continue these to the August 13th, then you can go ahead and vote on that. And then I think that we can move on from there.
All right, so I'll then go for the motion by Mr. Dingfelder with the substitute motion. Do we have a second on that?
Second on the substitute motion, so it can be discussed.
I have a second by Mr. Miranda. Madam Clerk, can you take a roll call vote?
Vieira,
And I'm confused here. Are we voting on Councilman Dingfelder's motion?
Yes, you're voting.
Yes. Let me have a discussion, if I may. I'm fine with finishing Channel Side today if we have enough time. I want to be very clear. Mr. Chair and Mr. Massey, how much, and not to discuss in a vote, my apologies, how much more time do we have? If we have 10 minutes, I think we can finish this up. That's my only confusion.
I believe you have a meeting scheduled, a city council special call meeting that begins at 1:30, and it is now 12:40.
Okay.
Okay, how much time do we need for? Okay, then you know what? I will go for now for continuing downtown to next week and to see if we can finish up Channel Side today. So I am within 1 minute of flipping, so I'm voting yes. Go ahead. I thought we didn't have enough time.
Mr. Chairman, based upon all of that, this is Dingfelder, I'll withdraw my motion. I agree. Let's try and finish up Channel Side and see where we go in the next 10, 15 minutes. I'll withdraw my motion.
All right, so we have a motion on for Mr. Carlson. I believe it was seconded by Mr. Miranda.
And I did Mr. Dingfelder's motion, second motion Dingfelder's.
Okay.
And he took it out, but I had no motion on the floor.
Point of order. And so what, Madam Clerk, was there on Mr. Carlson's motion, who seconded, do you recall?
yes, Vieira,
That motion
Vieira
from Mr.
withdraws
Carlson.
now.
Will withdraw.
Vieira withdraws his motion.
second. His second, my second. Sorry for the confusion, guys.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Carlson. Do I have a second as it relates to Mr. Carlson's motion? Do I have a
Okay,
second?
I'd like to change the motion to move the downtown discussion to the next meeting, please.
I have a motion by Mr. Carlson to move item number 4. Who seconded it? Second?
Dingfelder's second as related just to downtown. Continue the discussion the next month.
I have a second by Mr. Dingfelder. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Vieira,
Yes.
Beecham,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Booth.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, dealing back to item number 3.
Okay, could I make a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would like to, for this is in regard to the Channel District CRA. I would like to make a motion, and sorry, I'm making this up as I go along. I would like to make a motion that that the CRA approve, this board approve, proceeding with an update to the community plan that would be finished within 6 months, would require that a planning firm be used that has not worked with any of the Channel District developers in the last 5 years, and that would limit funding to 5 years out. So that would mean to 5 years out, and that would exclude Portland.
That's your motion, sir?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson has a motion.
Any
on the floor.
discussion permitted? Oh, sorry.
I was gonna look for a second, but we can, Mr. Massey, how's that procedurally? Motion on the floor, looking for a second, and then go into discussion. Can we take discussion at time
Yes,
before?
that's exactly what you would do, Mr. Goods. You could seek a second. I would say relative to the limitation on who the consultant could be, by state law, we are bound to abide by whatever the processes that are in effect for the city. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. So.
If that doesn't have a second, can I make a different motion?
Well, let me get through it. Let me get through it first. Have a motion from Mr. Carlson. Do we have a second? Have a motion on the floor from Mr. Carlson. Do we have a second? Motion dies of lack of no second.
That's correct, sir.
I'd like to, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make another motion. I'd like to make a motion to sunset the Channel District Community Redevelopment Area in fiscal year 2023. All currently committed projects will be completed as scheduled with no new project commitments made thereafter.
I have a motion on the floor by Member Carlson. Do I have a second? I have a motion on the floor by Member Carlson. Do I have a second? Motion dies of lack of a second. All right, moving right along.
And
We'll go
Mr.
into
Chair,
information.
or you know what, strike that. I'm sorry. I was gonna mention my disregard. Time is not on our side. Go ahead, sir.
We'll go into information reports and new business.
Could, Mr. Chair, could I?
Go ahead, Mr. Carlson, you recognize.
Yeah, the problem now with the Channel District CRA is that they need to, if you all don't want to shut it down, which you didn't vote to shut it down, then some process has to go forward. And if at the very least, they're saying that they want some kind of plan. And my recommendation was to put limits on the plan. I don't think the planning firm, any planning firm that's been working with any of the developers should be working for the district or for the city in doing that. But the other thing is that we don't control the Portland. That's why I mentioned that part of it. And also, I think we should put some limits on it. Why should we let it go indefinitely out into the future? Or until 2023, until 2033. If you all just want to move forward without doing anything, that's fine. But there's a lot of money there that's trapped, as I said, with the VIP pass that nobody else in the city has access to. And I think we should do our best to try to not just accommodate folks in one part of the city, but look at how we can do something else. If somebody has an alternate motion to that, please let me know what your issues are. Otherwise, we're going to end up with no change, and they'll just continue as they are, spending on things that are nice to have instead of what we really need throughout the city.
Member Carlson, I respect everything you're talking about. I do understand as a person who lives in a blighted community, respect the effort, but I guess the problem that I have is that the channel group is coming back with a strategic action plan. And I think we need to look at that action plan and to see what is it that's going to be put in that plan. And I think at that particular time, we may can look at some limitations of possibly sunsetting down the road, looking at their action plan. I know most of the CACs right now have just hired folks to do new action plans. So I think we need to be looking at those action plans when they come back, and then look at criteria be set to say, okay, we've said 2023 or 2024, what have you, and set the goal at that particular point, if that's what we want to do at that particular time. So I do respect everything you're trying to do. I'm on board with what you're trying to do, but I just think we need to wait a little bit longer to give folks a chance to come back with plans and looking at the economy that's going on right now. If there's no discussion on the channel issue, I'd like to go ahead and go to the
Chairman, may I say something also?
You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also respect what Mr. Carlson's trying to do. Believe me, I do. But if you look at one CRA and then it starts an operation for another CRA to fall in, and I don't want to start a domino effect among the CRAs. What I'm trying to do is solve what Mr. Carlson is saying in a different manner. And I appreciate what he's trying to do. I really do. But it's got to be a different manner. And my opinion is that it's got to change the way we're doing. We got to get out of that toolbox that we have and look at other toolboxes, see if we can facilitate exactly what he wants to do in a different fashion. And I hope we can do that. And I haven't spoken to the administration directly, but I think they get the sense of it. They want to do what we're asking. And just give us a chance for another week or so to come up with some plans. And I'll start that today when we go to the council meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much.
And
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Felder.
Well, I think I heard Mr. Councilman Vier, and then we'll go with Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. No, and I concur with what Councilman Miranda and Councilman Goots or Mr. Chairman Goots said. You know, for me, there's a lot of unknown. The litigation is, you're always going to have litigation. That's just the way it is. But especially the county losing those funds, the city, the administration, a lot of different unknowns. You know, the way that I see this is you have a lot of people in these areas in Sulphur Springs, the USF area, in East Tampa, people who have been underprivileged, marginalized, without a voice. And if we seek to give them a voice, a heightened voice, through a process like this, I want to make sure that we lay a proper foundation. I want to make sure that we do it right. Because when we bring out ideas like this, we make explicit promises. We have to make sure that this is carried out correctly. That's my challenge. Like Councilman Miranda said and Chairman Good said, I salute Councilman Carlson for bringing forth this issue. I salute him for his leadership in highlighting these deficits. But I just want to make sure that we do this right so that we don't have regrets on the process. The substance, right, the overall substance of where I think all seven are trying to go is right. That is the procedure going at it right. I think that's the main challenge that we want to get a hold of right here, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dingfelder, you're recognized.
Yes, sir. Two things. You asked for new business, and I also wanted to address this issue. Mr. Carlson, I commend you, as everybody else has, for thinking outside the box. I think it's fantastic. You are an idea person. You look at things, you analyze things, and we all respect that. As somebody who's gone down many, many times without getting a second, I feel your pain. But I want to remind you that council, I think unanimously, CRA board approved this to ask staff to do all the research, to massage it, and to bring it back for a significant discussion today. So I just want to recognize that this board and the CRA and City Council have supported you in that regard. Now, at the end of the day, on the substantive level, we didn't support your motions, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I just wanted to let you know that was the case. I voted for this very, very healthy discussion today, and I commend you for thinking outside the box. In regard to new business, Mr. Chairman, I would request that I have concerns about some of our large institutions that happen to be downtown and Channelside in terms of the Straws, the Tampa Theater, the Aquarium, the Art Museum, the Children's Art Museum, the History Center. These are all institutions that sit on city property. In the case of the Performing Arts Center, were built with a great deal of city funds, et cetera, and they're all hurting badly because of the COVID virus. They also, I think all of them have applied for county money, federal money through the county to get some relief. But I've been advised by the county folks that the relief they're seeking is not necessarily going to be enough, or the relief they're going to get is not necessarily going to be enough. So what I would ask is, I'd ask our legal department and our staff to come back in September with a report on the possibility, the feasibility of trying to funnel some emergency relief to some of those institutions as they might need it. Now, if they get the relief from the county in the meantime that's adequate, then it becomes moot. But I'm on the Strauss board. Chairman Maniscalco is on the Tampa Theater board. I'm sure other people are on the other boards. But each one of us can assure the others that these institutions are hurting big time in numerous ways. So it's a simple motion, and the staff and legal and I have already been talking about this to a certain extent. And I'd look for a second on that. It doesn't commit any money. It just looks for staff and legal to start doing some research on the issue and come back in September.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Miranda. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Vieira,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Booth.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll go down the line.
Mr. Chair.
Miranda, do you have? Mr. Citro, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. To direct the Channelside CAC to prepare both strategic action plans, new strategic action plans, and new CRA plans, and present them both to this board at the earliest date possible.
Maniscalco, second.
Elephant. Mr. Citro has a motion on the floor, followed by Mr. Maniscalco with a second. Any discussion? Any discussion?
We're bringing the whole thing back now for conversation.
Oh, point of order. Point of order.
Charlie.
Point of order. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a motion on the floor. Roll call vote.
Vieira,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
Dingfelder,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
No.
and Booth.
Yes.
Motion carried with Carlson voting no.
All right, going down the line. Mr. Miranda, do you have anything?
No, sir.
Mr. Citro, do you have anything, sir?
Mr. Chair, nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Carlson?
No, thank you to everyone for having the discussion, and look forward to the discussion next week or next month. But especially thanks to all the staff for all the time that they put into this.
Mr. Maniscalco?
No, nothing.
Mr. Dingfelder?
No, I'm good, and thank you for the board's support earlier.
Mr. Vieira?
Nothing, sir. Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, it's been one ride today. A lot of good discussion, a lot of good presentations by the staff. You know, when you sit back and you see the amount of work that has to be put into making these operations run. It takes a lot. And I just want to say thank you to all the board members and the staff for the work they've done today. Again, Mr. Carlson, you did a fabulous job. You had good arguments, but right now we need more information. And I think more information is good so we can know what we need to do. I think that the administration is listening. They heard. I believe that our director for the for our CRA has heard the message. And it's got to be looking at housing as number one in all of our CRAs. That's the factor right there. Also making sure that they're thriving in other areas to make sure we've got some workforce and jobs coming to the communities. So I would say we've all got a lot of work to do. I'm happy to be a part of that. And again, we will get it done. We have a great council here. We bring great ideas. And we're going to show the citizens of Tampa that we are committed to bringing them success and bringing them prosperity in all areas of this city. So I say God bless you all. I can take a motion out for receiving file.
So moved, Vera. Second.
Vera, thank you. Motion on the floor by Mr. Vera, second by Mr. Carlson. We need a roll call vote, I believe.
Vera,
Yes.
Citro,
Yes.
Felder,
Yes.
Maniscalco, Maniscalco, Miranda,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
and Booth.
Yes, we're adjourned.
Motion carries with Maniscalco being absent a vote.
We're adjourned.